get so surprised. Like every time we go on, you pick a different intro. I don't know if it's gonna be 20 seconds, 3 seconds. I'm smoking my vape in the green room and come right back on.
Well, the worst part is I was an idiot and I started making show specific intros.
People trying to knock you down.
What are you doing?
Oh, I had YouTube on open. I'm sorry, Rob. So wait, what were you saying? You make specific intros?
I started making show specific intros, right? Which is kind of cool. But then it's like, oh, I don't have time to make one today. Oh crap, I can't use one of the ones I made in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's not show specific. Me and Rob were just talking in the green room, and I'm having a blowout with my wife right now.
We also talked about how you weren't going to talk about this tonight because she's upstairs.
So I'm just telling everybody, you guys have to remind me Friday. So my wife's going away tomorrow morning. If you guys remind me Friday, I'll tell the story, but I can't tell it now because she's upstairs. I know she's listening. Right now, she's by the door listening to see if I say anything.
She's probably just glad she doesn't have to sleep on a couch tonight.
Dude, I'm the worst. I can't help but blab my mouth. I'm so bad. Oh my gosh. It's like, I don't know. It's like, how are you surprised by me at this point, Nicole? You've known me forever. It's been a very long time. It's been a lot of funny things going on, man. How you been, Rob? So me and Rob were talking about maybe switching to Tuesdays and Thursdays because I feels like the run from Friday is a really long stretch from Thursday.
Yeah, if we do Wednesday and Thursday, then it's 6 days until the next show.
It's such a long stretch. It's like I don't know.
You see the graph of views, like
yeah, it really does kill me, man. It's like, and especially because Tim Gordon threw us a shout out and he did it on Thursday, I think, and it's like all these new people subscribed, and we have no new content for them, so they're just like stuck checking out old shows, which is cool because they're checking some of our older stuff out. Like I got a few really awesome messages from guys that were turned on by Tim.
We got like 6 or 7 comments today on videos we did like 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, like so people who were going back and seeing old stuff that we did. It's really cool. Tim is awesome, dude. I mean, he basically did like a live read, like you would pay as an ad, man. I mean, that was so awesome of him.
Speaking of which, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure most people have heard, but Patreon canceled him because he told the truth about a certain group of people. So we did put his new support. I forget what company he's going with. Subscribestar. Yeah. I put his link in the description. So if anyone was a Patreon of his, make sure you hit that up. Or if you haven't, check out his stuff and then hit up that Subscribestar link for Tim Gordon.
Yeah, man. He went up against the Rainbow Cult. You gotta be careful with that Rainbow Cult. They'll smoke you. But
no, not the Amish.
No, not the Amish. But what's funny is they sent him like a warning, and they were like,
you got
to take these 3 videos down. And he sends them a letter. And the letter is hysterical. He's like,
should we find it? I bet we can.
It's pretty funny. I don't even know if we can read it on air. He's like, you guys are into the butt cult.
That's true. We'll read it on air, and then we'll be the next one canceled.
It was funny, dude. He didn't want to say certain words, so he's like playing around with words that rhyme and stuff. It's actually pretty funny.
You know, they're reading it like, what is he talking about? You know, because he's way over their head. I guarantee.
He's got some funny inside references on his show if you watch his show a lot. But yeah, dude, he's very supportive of us. So all we could do is return the favor. So if you guys can, if you can afford it, please go check Tim's. He doesn't have Patreon anymore, so he's over on Subscribestar. I think he also started a Locals. So, but yeah, he's awesome, man. I tell you, all the people that like we've become friends with have been so supportive. Also, Rick Barrett. Rick Barrett just like Rick Barrett lost his gig over at
I forget
Crusade Channel, Crusade Network. Yeah, so he lost his gig over there, and he just started a show. It's basically a show about guns and like gun laws and all this, and he goes over like whatever's topical in the news about gun laws in your local area, things like that. So if you guys can, I'm gonna have to actually, I don't remember his channel name.
Daily Mag Dump.
Daily Mag Dump, M-A-G.
Mag, M-A-G, yep. Now, I mean, obviously go and support him, but I don't think he's going to have a problem because the gun tube is, you know, what.
Yeah, it's way bigger than Catholic tube, that's for sure.
Yeah, like mediocre gun channels get like 2 million subscribers. So he'll probably be bigger than Marshall and Frad in no time.
I hope so. Rick is an awesome guy, man. Very cool. Now I can't tell the first time catching you guys live.
People from Tim.
First time catching you guys live. I've been binge watching your videos for the last 2 days though. See, yeah, that has to be somebody else from Tim sending them over. So listen, we do things very differently, Rob and I. Like we'll tend to pick a topic. Like tonight, we thought we were going to discuss this Barron letter on the Synod. We're probably not going to get to that.
We're not going to get to that.
We're not clickbaity, guys. We're gonna.
It's either completely intentional clickbait meant to be funny because we're not like.
Yeah,
we're not ambulance chasers, right? So when we do clickbait, it's funny, or we never actually get around to it anyway.
That happens a lot. Like I'll get sidetracked and I go on a tangent, and that's it. We lose it. But tonight, Rob's going to do a lot of talking because he knows a lot.
Sean.
I unironically came for the Barron letter. Sean, maybe we'll talk about it. I don't know yet. Stick around. Linger longer. Stick around. We might get to it. I don't want to tell him that flat out we're not going to get to it. Then he'll leave. Listen, I can't tell the wife Haidt story. Like she's probably right upstairs. But I can tell a funny story that happened to us last week. So like, we've had like weeks of like just things going on, constant madness in the house, and we finally had a night where it was last Friday, and we finally had a night where we were alone. So. My one daughter went to a sweet 16. Yeah, I heard about the show from Tim. My wife and I laughed so hard about the jelly you put in his friend's coffee. Listen, remember the story I told about the guy with at work with the preparation H? So, all right, so listen, my friend at work he's out of his mind. So we work with a guy he got a rash from his hard hat. And
that's right.
He was like, he's really upset about the rash in his hard hat. And my friend tells him, "Oh, listen, you got to go. I'll go get something for you." He runs in a pharmacy and he gets Preparation H. And he tells the guy, "Look, Preparation H, Preparation Hard Hat." And Preparation H is for hemorrhoids. And the he's wiping Preparation H on his forehead. I was dying. It was so stupid. It made me laugh so hard. Tim's a red pill with a white pill. Listen, that's the thing. We don't want people to be black pilled. We want people to be white pilled. Like, hey, newcomers, welcome to the Wednesday Serious Show. All right, so listen, let me get to the wife story.
We have to do this because, like, the topic we may or may not get to, which is the main topic of the show, it is kind of a serious topic that cause anxiety, right?
We're going to get serious in a little bit, and Rob knows way more about this topic than I do. I just have like a cursory knowledge of it, so he's going to do a lot of talking tonight.
Our two potential special guests that may or may not show up know even more.
So it's going to when we get to the topic, it'll be serious. But we were laughing in the chat before, or in the green room before, because all right, let me get to this wife story first, then we'll talk about that. So. My one daughter goes to Sweet 16. The other daughter had a party. So we tell my son we're going out to dinner because he's hanging out with his girlfriend and he can't be at the house while we're hanging out, or while we're out. I mean, so we all the kids are out. We lock all the doors. I light the fire. We got the fireplace lit, the romantic music on. We got candles lit. My son forgot something, and he comes home. And he's banging on the door. Because usually the garage door, you open the garage door and you just come right in the garage. It's usually not locked, and it's locked. Me and my wife are scrambling. I open the door and he comes in the house. He's like, "I don't understand. Why are the lights off? Why is the music on? What's going on here?" Like, he was so bad. I'm just like, "Man, what are you doing?"
Mickey's 17, right?
He's 17.
No, you've done 17. A good job if he's 17 and that clueless. You've done 17. A good job.
There's romantic music on. The lights are out. What do you mean? What do we do? I'm like, "Get out of the house, you moron. What are you doing?" This kid, I wanted to kill him. all of a sudden it dawns on him. His girlfriend's just looking at him, grilling him because his girlfriend picked up on it right away. And she's like, Nick, what are you doing? Like, your parents are trying to have like an evening alone. My wife was so mortified. She's just like, oh my God, my son came home. Like, just relax, don't worry. And then once that happens, you're not getting it. Was like, put the fireplace out, turn the music on, let's just go. Like, what are we even doing at this point? You guys don't realize, like, teenagers are so different than little kids. Little kids, you could, you get them to bed. Like, they hear something, they don't know what's going on. But, like, when you have teenagers, it's so hard, so difficult to, like, just, be alone with each other, man. It's so, I never realized how hard this was going to be. It's like, and we don't have a big house. We're on a one-story
Think how
house.
hard it was for your parents with 9 children.
No way. Like, I don't know.
You wonder how numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 even showed up.
It's crazy because my parents had so it's the older 4, and then there's like an 8-year gap between the younger 5. So like between my brother Mikey and my brother Joey's an 8-year gap, and then it was just Joey, Teresa, Chrissy, Frankie, Janine, Frankie. So it's 5 kids in 6 years. So at one point my parents had 5 kids under the age of 7 in the house. But like you said, it's like, how I don't understand. But their bedroom was upstairs at least. Like, we had a decent sized house.
True.
So, but yeah, that was an interesting saga. The and then I was you know what I told Enoch today. Enoch said he talked about a story about something when he was younger and about his dad. And I was like, you know what my dad used to do to us? So my dad would take us camping as kids, and he would take us on these hikes through the woods with a flashlight.
Oh, that's right. I got to tell you, yeah.
And then we'll get into your story.
Yeah.
So he would take us on these hikes in the woods, and then he would shut the flashlight off and bolt in front of us and take off. And we're like 6, 7 years old. Terrified, Rob. Like, terrified. And he would hide behind a tree. And we would know he's hiding behind a tree.
Right.
And you're like, Dad, please don't scare us. Dad, please don't scare us. And he would terrify us and jump out and scare the hell out of us. It's like, this man, he gave me PTSD, my father. I have to yell at him for some of those things he did to us.
Now, I found out with this story that Anthony has never been snipe hunting.
I never even heard of it.
That means when Anthony comes out and visits, I'm going to take him snipe hunting. We're going to videotape it. And all of you who have been snipe hunting before will, of course, love it. And those of you who haven't probably shouldn't watch it.
What is it?
I can't tell you. It's something you have to experience firsthand.
Wait, you told me I have to tell you this on the air, and you're not going to actually tell me? What is snipe hunting?
I can't tell you because then I can't take you.
Dude, I may not be out there for 2-3 years. You have to tell me what snipe hunting is. This isn't fun. Okay, I've been waiting for 2 days to find out what snipe hunting is.
The problem isn't so much you finding out; it's anyone in the chat who hasn't gone finding out, because it, like they said, it's a rite of passage.
I have no idea what it is. Snipe hunting is a rite of passage. Wow, I can't believe.
See, everyone knows. Everyone knows.
That's funny. I have no idea what it is. I've never even heard of it.
So snipes they're a real bird. That's where the word sniper comes from. They're small, fast. So anyone who could shoot a snipe was called a sniper, and that, they were a good marksman. Well, the snipes don't live I don't think they live in America at all. So when you take someone snipe hunting, it's usually at night. Usually they're new to camping or being outside, and everyone does it a little differently. But like the way we did it in my family is you'd go out and you'd give this new person like a garbage bag and a flashlight. And you tell them that they need to walk around the woods, shining a flashlight, going, snipe, here, snipe, 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 snipe. And that this bird would come running, and they had to catch it in the garbage bag. Dude. You let him do it for like 2 hours in the middle of the night.
Wait a minute. So I have these tricks that I do with people. And it's like it'll be like, okay, like I put sticks in a shape where they look like a martini glass, and I break a little piece off and it looks like an olive, and I'm like, okay, you got to move 2 sticks, and you can only make 2 moves, and you have to make it look like the olive is outside the martini glass. So I'll do that, and I have a couple of tricks I do with like toothpicks, and then I go, all right, so now this is the last one, and I give them one that's impossible to solve. and they'll sit there for 2 hours just looking at them. I'll just sit there and walk away and just let them look at this stupid thing that's impossible to solve. And it's just funny because they just did 3 in a row where they're like, there was a chance, and I showed them how to do it at the end. And oh man. Yeah. So, all right. So why don't we actually explain what is the fourth turning?
Well, we have probably at least half an hour until either of our guests show up. Do we want to watch those 2 videos first? Or
Oh, guys, I forgot. We have amazing videos to show you. All right, guys, please stick around because these videos are amazing. So throughout the day...
It's not Corey Feldman.
No Corey Feldman, I promise.
Well, I already saw the number drop 1, so someone already shut it off. Don't worry, guys. There's no Feldman.
So this first one is actually really fun. People may have seen it already, but like throughout the day, if I see something really funny, I send it to Rob, like, oh, we got to play this on air. We got to play this on air. This one, the first one, is really funny.
I wish the video was better, but I'm not surprised.
It's just not. But
don't know how to take a decent video.
All right, let's see. All right, so read the thing first. So animal rights protesters trespassed on a duck farm, chained their necks to a slaughter line. Then suddenly the machine switched on and started to move while they're still attached. So now, think about when animal rights activists go and they protest somewhere. These idiots went there. The place was shut down, and they chained their necks to the thing that cuts the chickens' necks off. Like they put their thing on the thing that cuts the chickens' necks off. A guy comes to work, has no idea that they're there, and flips the switch and turns them on, and this is what happens.
I just want to point out that these people are, protesting the pretty quick and painless killing of a duck, but yet they're the same people that are all for, the dismemberment of human children. So I'm glad no one was hurt in this video. Obviously, there would have been a sensitive justice to it, though.
You're really glad I'm not.
What?
I said you're actually.
I have to say that for YouTube.
Yeah.
Video sent to ABC7 by activist group Direct Action Everywhere shows terrified protesters crying out for help as a duck slaughter processing line that they're chained to starts to move.
It's not graphic at all.
Panic set in when the machine started pulling animal rights activist Thomas Chang's head and neck into a pool.
Almost decapitated. Come on, little over dramatic.
Yeah. So Ipa Rose says when the arsonist lit themselves on fire, which actually reminds me of what we were talking about in the green room, which is what goes on Twitter with me. And I have arguments with myself because all right, so here's this backstory. I got my account suspended. I'm on my third Twitter
account.
On
your third or fourth?
Third iteration. So my first account had like 2,700 followers, and they nuked it. I got the second one up to like I think around 2,000, maybe 19 something, 2,000, and they nuked it. Now I'm on the third one, and the third one's right around 2,000. Then Elon comes in and he restores my second account, not my original, my second account. So I didn't know what to do with it, and I'm like, what? Like I have this second account. And I don't even know how it started, but I just started arguing with myself from each account. But people think it's funny, and I don't know why. It's the dumbest thing ever.
I've been telling everyone, please don't encourage this.
I'm not. I was like almost done with it. I was almost done with it, and then Kale Zeldin today tweets, and he's like, I don't know why. This bit never gets old to me. I buried it hard today.
It's one of those, it's like you groan and laugh at the same time. It's like,
the dumbest thing ever. Like, I have nerve for giving Supreme Pontiff Jeff. I give him flack for like his terrible puns, but I don't even think they're nearly as bad as me fighting with my own. Like, I have a split personality at this point, and I hate the other guy.
Well, as do we all.
Yeah.
As do we all.
None of you have anything on my wife right now. I promise you she hates me more than all of you.
In freeze thaw, we see this.
Okay, we ready?
Yeah, let's go for it. Just go right into it, dude.
For those of you who were here when we watched the video of the guy suffocating in the suitcase, you're not about to see a reporter.
Yes. Okay. So nobody dies here. We're just gonna tell you, nobody dies. There's no death. Though I do think that suitcase video was pretty funny. Even though somebody did pass, it was still pretty funny.
Not in the video. We didn't watch anyone die in that video either, but okay.
All right, so let's go. Let's play the video.
Yeah, my wife wants to know if she goes, what, no snuff video this week?
No, not this week. We're trying to look. We're toning it down a little. We have new members. We're gonna try and just gently ease into this, and we're gonna show people that we're lighthearted and fun. So we're just gonna show a reporter getting hit by a car, but she doesn't die. This is good. This
I don't think she even gets injured. She
doesn't get hurt. She's all right. But it's just crazy.
What's hilarious to me is the way this guy doesn't react at all.
Okay, we have to. That's literally what I was gonna tell you to pause it.
It's a little screwed up.
All right, let's go.
In freeze thaw, we see this water main breaks.
Look at him!
Look at him!
He doesn't move. He doesn't move.
Just got hit by a car, but I'm okay, Tim.
Ooh.
I'm okay.
Oh, that's a first for me.
Ooh, that's a first for me.
We're all good. I'm okay. Yeah, that's live TV for you. It's all good. I actually got hit by a car in college too, just like that.
Wow.
I am so glad I'm okay.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yes, I do have a story.
So the driver of that SUV did stop to make sure she was okay. But get this, your guy who was all alone, no photographer, as you can see there, she goes.
Yeah, so this reporter was alone. There was no videographer, or whatever, however you pronounce it. So, but yeah, isn't that crazy? How the reporter's just standing there and he's just like he thought it was part of the show or something. It's like, dude, this is your show. What wage slavery does to someone.
But anyway, so we actually had something similar happen to us this weekend. We took the boys to Adventure Zone. It's like an arcade, pizza, mini golf indoor place, right? And it's in the next bigger city to us. So it's about a 2-hour drive. So we drive there. We have fun with the boys.
You can take that
this
down.
part is. Oh yeah, I forgot. This place is kind of in the one of the busier sections of the city. So we're leaving. We get in the car. We're parked on the street. We're pulling out, driving down the street. We're only going about 20, 25, and I see this lady, barely see her, right behind a parked vehicle.
Yeah.
And I see her look the other direction, and I start to slow down just cause. But I see her look the other direction, assuming she's going to look my way and stay there. She looks the other direction and literally jumps into the street, without looking at all. And I slam on the brakes and honk, and she just has enough time to look at us as we just barely tap her.
Oh wow!
And I rolled down my window and I'm like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And she was extremely apologetic.
That's what I was gonna say. Was she recognizing it was her fault for not looking before jumping in?
So this is a pretty liberal city filled with a bunch of Karens. So I was expecting to get chewed out by this lady, but no, she's like, "I can't believe I didn't look. I'm so sorry." And we drive away after she assured us 10 times she was okay. And we look back at Maddie, our 4-year-old, and we're like, "Are you going to make sure to look both ways across the street from now on?" And he goes, well, definitely.
Do you realize what you're doing there? You're talking to a 4-year-old because the first thing you teach your kids is you look both ways before you cross the street. Now, how old was this lady?
Had to be in probably 30.
You're talking about a 30-year-old just jumps out in the street without looking?
Oh yeah, and she would, like I said, this is kind of the busier part of the city. She was going across the street to a bar that was right there, so she had probably had a drink or two already. I mean, she wasn't drunk. But,
teachable moment, Lou.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what's crazy? I'm like, wait, what is he not saying? I'm not surprised because he knew it was a woman driver. Oh, that was the news clip. The woman driver. The guy didn't even break. He was just in there. He was like, a woman behind the wheel. Of course she got hit. Well, Oz, I just told my dad scaring us in the woods story. I don't think you were here for it. Dude, I work in the city, okay? And we'll have like traffic set up, diversions, things like that, because you're working in the city. I can't tell you how many times people looking down at their phone will just walk right into our safety setups like that. It's amazing how oblivious people are.
I think you sent me a video even of one day you just ripping into someone for walking through
that. And think about, remember we put a short together.
Wasn't it the lady that almost got hit by one of your bobcats?
No. So somebody actually died a couple months back. It wasn't our company, thank God, but it was a company. So, all right. So what happens is there's companies that go in and they dig the main electric line and they put the electric line in and then they backfill it with dirt. Then my company goes in, digs the dirt out, put concrete in, and we put asphalt down. Right. The company that was going there to originally put the electric line in, the guy, it was like 3 a.m. They were working a night shift. The backhoe driver throws the machine in reverse and backed right over some lady looking down at her phone, walking right into the work zone. And
people don't realize the lack of visibility you have.
Lack of visibility in that machine. This guy hit her and drove to the next job, had no idea he hit her. The woman was dead on the floor for hours before the cops figured out who it was. They saw it on because you're on camera everywhere in New York City at this point. And they sent this video out to every single construction company that works for Con Edison. Then we had to go in, we had to sit down, and we had to have a whole safety meeting, and they showed the video on the screen. It was pretty crazy. I mean,
can you imagine?
You feel terrible for the guy.
Like, it's really not your fault. You really had no idea, and yet you killed a person.
You took somebody's life. And it could have been avoided if he had a flag guy there. Like, he didn't have a flag guy. So it was, look, it'll be his fault. They're going to get sued bad, that company, because he should have had a flag guy behind him. They should have had safety set up. He was backing up. They were done with the job. He was backing up off the sidewalk, looking over his left shoulder, and she was behind his right shoulder. And he just plowed right over her. She had no idea he was coming. But she was just looking down at her phone. There's a reverse alarm on, not even paying attention. You guys really do have to be careful when you hear that reverse alarm, because there's a lot going on for construction guys and they're not paying attention sometimes perfectly.
I mean, people just need to be better at situational awareness in general, whether it's driving, walking, out in public. I mean, crazy stuff can happen anytime. You just got to be ready.
I mean, listen, I watch movies in my car on the way home from work every day. I mean, I'm watching documentaries, YouTube videos all day. I'm in a pickup truck and I have an iPad mount. It's a miracle. I get home live every day.
Now, see, like it sounds terrible, but the type of driving you're doing is mostly
first of all,
sitting in traffic, maybe going 5 miles per hour.
And I honestly, I listen to, I put things on the iPad that are actually audio stuff. Like if I throw a podcast on, if I'm watching Tim Gordon's show, I don't have to actually watch what he's doing. I'm just more listening. As your lawyer, help me help you. Is that
Mark?
Jason or Mark? It's got to be Mark. Right? All right, Mark. Allegedly,
Brandon had it covered.
I allegedly do this. This is not definitely what I do, but it's allegedly what I do. Ladies and gentlemen, we're watching Exhibit A. Oh, our new viewers, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. Look. Just for anybody that doesn't know, for anybody new that's checking us out because of Tim Gordon, because, I mean, first off, Enoch had Marshall on the other day. He threw us a shout out, right? Yep. Then Jason wrote a tweet about Marshall's video with the statue in New York City. And he said, Anthony, he mentions me and he goes, you should go and throw that statue in the Hudson. So then they were making memes with me and Marshall throwing the statue in the Hudson and stuff. So there is a good chance that I think we got like 40 new subscribers in the past couple of days, right? So there's definitely some new people that are going to check this video out.
And that's just on YouTube.
I hope you guys aren't expecting the typical Catholic show, because we're just we're doing our best, guys. We're trying to we're doing our best. We're going to get to the topic now. All right, so Rob, why don't we actually now, Stephen, is this a safe space?
Not for your kids.
It really is safe space on this channel. Why don't we actually try to explain to people what the fourth turning is? Okay, guys, now it took 30 minutes. We're finally going to get into the topic. Y'all seriously the most relaxing and funny Catholic show. Thank you, Samantha. That really, guys, like if you find it funny watching us and like just chill, like there's no greater compliment you guys could give us than we make you laugh. Because we're not looking to be the hard-hitting news guys. That's never going to be us. But we do love to like just show what it's like to just hang with your friends and goof around and stuff. So we will, yes, Kaiser Bob says, finally, we are getting to the topic at hand. So, all right, let's get off the construction disasters and let's go. So I have a little thesis right here, Rob, if you don't have one.
No,
I'll bring him on.
he's just in underwear. I probably shouldn't.
It's okay, bring him on. He don't hear you. It's a Catholic show, guys. You're going to find little children. Go.
They went to bed.
They went to
It's my
bed.
boy.
He say hi
Hi,
to
Maddie. Hi, Maddie. What's up, bud?
Can't hear you.
I know. All right, let him scramble. You can stick around.
Okay, so the fourth turning. Hope says sorry. I told him to wait for me. Yeah, he doesn't wait very well. You don't wait very well, do you? Anyway, the fourth turning. I guess before we get into it, let's give a little disclaimer. Like we said earlier, like a topic like this can cause some people anxiety because I think it's what we're seeing, and I think it is not a prophecy, but it's a prediction of what's to come. But I mean, like someone said earlier, you gotta take the white pill. You can't get black pilled about this stuff. Can't be too anxious. Can't be too worried, because what comes, and you just got to be ready for it and just got to deal with it. So
yeah, and I think we're due for some kind of a chastisement. I think a chastisement is actually a show of mercy from God, right? Like we need this. Like we need people. Like just think about how many people have woken up in the past couple of years to like. I mean, I know personally in my family, I've seen 3 siblings convert because things are so insane in the world, So, like, if anybody gets a little nervous about it, it's just understand that God's in control, and these are just patterns.
Yeah, and like no matter how terrible things get in the world, I mean, by His very nature, God only allows what ends up making the most good. So, whatever
God brings good.
Whatever terrible things happen, it's for the best. As hard as that is to believe, sometimes.
In Scripture, St. Paul says, "For those who love God, all things work towards the good."
Yep.
I'm sure I misquoted that, but
But so the fourth turning, what it is at its heart is basically kind of a cyclic theory of history, to where you can look at history in cycles of about 80 to 100 years. There is a turning, what they call a turning, where basically whatever paradigm or worldview the world had been running on for that period changes completely, and this is preceded by some sort of crisis period where you see more division, where you see people willing more. Maddie, you stop making noise. Don't click the keyboard. And during this crisis period, people are become more willing to completely throw away old ideas. They become more willing to think in a new way, right? So this theory specifically, the fourth turning.
I can pick up. So our turning began at World War II. Now these run in 20
period
year
we're in
cycles.
now.
Yeah, right. So the period we're in now began at World War II. So, okay, so let's see. So this is a book. The Fourth Turning is a book about a prophecy. So Howe and Strauss observed that American history...
Not a prophecy in the sense of someone prophesied something from God.
It's more of a prediction.
A prediction, yeah.
A prediction. So Howe and Strauss observed that American history shows a new era, or turning, about every 20 years. In simplest terms, the first turning is an upbeat era of strengthening institutions. Okay, so now the first era starts at World War II. Now you also have to look at this like, the saying that hard times bring about, strong men bring good times, Good times bring weak men bring hard times bring strong men, right? So you kind of get this cyclical thing that happens. So World War II comes, you had hard men, and they bring about good times, right? So that first era of 20 years is an upbeat era of strengthening institutions. The second turning is an awakening, a passionate era of spiritual upheaval when the older order comes under attack. Now, this would be around the 60s during the sexual revolution, right? So the first 20 years is like 1940 to 1960. So then you have the 60s, that decade, that period of upheaval would have been the sexual revolution. The third turning is an unraveling, a time when individualism is strengthened and institutions are weakened. Now, this happens from, I would say, like 1980 to 2000. So you have the whole thing happening with the Cold War going on, and you're starting to see. See, the thing is, I don't think this is an exact 20-year thing, right? Like a lot of the unraveling we saw has happened in the past few years also. The weakening of the institutions and things like that.
I think that happened. I honestly think that was happening earlier. And what you're thinking of is more the crisis period.
So I think all right, so let's go through this, right? So the third turning is an unraveling, a time when individualism is strengthened and institutions are weakened. You got, this is like the heavy metal era.
You have to go talk to mom. Go upstairs and talk to mama.
Yeah, Hope, come on.
I thought I was muted.
No, you weren't. So the third turning is an unraveling, a time when individualism is strengthened and institutions are weakened. The fourth turning is crisis, a decisive era of secular upheaval. The old order is toppled and the new one put in its place. Now, this also really does go into weak men make hard times. Now, what you had is now also what's funny is, like, everybody makes fun of millennials, but you're actually supposed to get like heroes from the millennial generation.
Yeah, because if you look at the where the millennials are on this graph, where they start, right, in their childhood, you're looking, if you look at the last, that's at the unraveling. So if you look at the last unraveling and who was in their childhood then, you're looking at the GI generation. You're looking at the people who fought.
Not the boomers, before the boomers.
Before the boomers, the leaders during World War II,
the greatest generation, we call them, right? The great generation. Or
I think I'm not a fan of the way they did generations here, because it doesn't look even. But yeah, I would say that the greatest generation, they were kids during the last unraveling period, which really was World War One. I think we think of World War One a lot of times as almost like a fourth turning period, or almost like
you would think, but really World War II is that turning period.
Because World War One was the unraveling, and what the mindset after World War One, people thought they could somehow still get back to that earlier period, right? And they tried to, but World War II, I should say, is what destroyed that entirely.
Yeah, so 80 years before World War II, you have the Civil War. And 80 years before the Civil War, you have the Revolution, right? The American Revolution. So that's where this...
And 100 years before that, you had the English Civil Wars, actually.
Right, so this is where this 80-year cyclical mindset comes from. Now, they're saying our period of crisis is going to end around 2030. And I think that a lot of this lines up with the Fatima prophecies, right? So, like, if you look at... I usually don't go for those kinds of topics, which is why I didn't put Fatima in the title or anything. But there is something too where the French Revolution happens, and 100 years prior, was it which king was it of France? Was it King Louis?
King Louis the 14th
was supposed to consecrate France. King Louis,
the Sacred Heart, Maddie. The Sacred Heart happened about 100 years before the French Revolution, and Louis XIV, a message was given to him saying that France had to be consecrated to the Sacred Heart, or bad things was going to happen. And that period was 100 years, and when it wasn't done within 100 years, the French Revolution happened.
Then it was Louis XVI who was king during the Revolution, and they behead him. So while he's captive, he says, "All right, I'm going to consecrate France to the Sacred Heart now, but it was too late. Right. So now Mary comes in 1917 and she appears to the children of Fatima. Then in 1929, she appears to Jacinta again and says to her she wants the Pope and the bishops to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart. So a lot of people theorize that because they didn't do that in 1929, 100 years later would be 2029, and around then would be that 100-year period. So it would kind of line up with the end of our fourth turning, which is kind of interesting.
Yep. Yeah. So right now, basically during like we were saying, during this crisis period, which this puts from 2005 to 2025, I would say you probably really saw this crisis period begin in 2008. Or maybe with the financial crisis.
What if not the financial crisis?
Then maybe what was it, 2015 with the Obergefell, potentially. But somewhere in there, this crisis period began. And you see the rise of like the Tea Party on the conservative side. You see the rise of Antifa on the liberal side. You see the rise of alt-right, which really is just, it's a meaningless term.
When did Occupy Wall Street happen?
That happened in Obama's first term after the 2008 crisis. So
it'd been around 2009, 2010, right around there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it says, so as America's recent third turning began in the mid-'80s, it was due to expire in the first decade of the 21st century. If we accept Howe and Strauss's thesis, America has already entered its next fourth turning. The consequences are immense. We quote as follows: "History is seasonal and winter is coming. Like nature's winter, the secular winter can come early or late. A fourth turning can be long and difficult, brief but severe, or perhaps mild. But like winter, it cannot be averted and must come in its turn." Now also, I throw the Mark Twain quote out all the time. History doesn't rhyme, but history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme, right? Mm-hmm. Now, all right. So, what's kind of all right, Joseph? I'm going to get to that because a lot of the things you're seeing in the world right now are happening in the church as well. Okay. And a lot of the upheaval that we're seeing in the world, you're seeing a pattern happen, especially with these intel agencies and stuff, how they're flooding the border, allowing this to happen. There's all these things that they're letting happen to undo the cultural adhesion that we have, right? So like we used to have like some kind of paradigm
we have
that we all lived by. It was like, even when 9/11 happens, right? It's like this major event happens. It brings the whole country together. It's like we put our differences aside. We have this thing that unites us, whether it's the flag or whatever you think it is. What happens is they when you open up the borders, you're bringing people in from a different culture that don't have that American mindset yet. They're not being like integrated into the culture the way you would hope they would. They're just telling them, no, diversity is our strength, and letting them.
I personally disagree. I mean, I don't know how much that really has anything to do with this, to be quite honest, personally.
I'll tell you my theory. So I think that everything you're seeing has to do with divide and conquer. Right. Yeah. Like I really do think that a big reason they open the borders is because it will lead to less cultural cohesion. And it has to do with us at each other's throats over these stupid issues. And it's how you divide and conquer a people. And if you really do think that there is some kind of an entity that's trying to put together some kind of systematic control over the globe, then the way you have to do that is you have to break America down, because the whole world really is an Americanist enterprise at this point still.
But see, here's where the fourth turning is a little different, though. Where this theory is a little different. It's really saying that it's not just one side trying to divide and conquer. It is society literally falling apart because that 80 to 100 year period. If you look at the graph, when this crisis begins is when we start to really lose those in the lost generation and those in the GI generation. And those were the people that created the post-World War II world. They're the ones that created the high at the end of the last fourth turning, right? So they're gone. We've lost them during the unraveling and during the beginning of this crisis. Okay,
let's take that off just so I can see you.
All
right, so you're saying
we've lost them. We've lost their voices. We've lost their paradigm, their values, their beliefs, just with the way generations, move, the way generations work. So now, after that high, we had the awakening of the 60s and 70s, which turns completely introspective, where people are self-centered and they're worried about making the best of themselves. And that's what creates that social unraveling, right? Because everything becomes about the individual. And now at the end of this unraveling,
this period you're comparing to would have been what, like the Roaring 20s?
Would have been the previous one, would have been, the Roaring 20s.
The Roaring 20s would have been like that cultural.
The alcohol fueled Roaring 20s is very similar to the drug fueled late 60s, early 70s, right? So it's not so much, in my opinion, that there's one side working to tear us apart. It's just that things are falling apart at the end of a period. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It is if we're not ready for it, right? Because I think it's clear the left is ready for it. The left is helping to drive it, because they recognize that something is changing and they want to be the ones to build what comes next. And we have to recognize that this is an opportunity for us, though, as well.
See, I see the left trying to break down, not build up. Right now, all right. So I'm constantly looking at the end of the Roman Empire. So now, if you look towards the end of the Roman Empire, what you start to see is when you look at the art, when you look at the statues, you start to see these like androgynous statues and art and stuff. And some of the stuff we're seeing today, you actually did see towards the decline of the Roman Empire. What I see is different today than you had at the decline of the Roman Empire is, like I said, it's almost like it's intentional and they're trying to get the empire to collapse. Now,
you have to build whatever you want.
Right. So there are people that want to rebuild what they want and put what they want in place. So like you're saying the left, when you say the left, it's not necessarily the average.
It's not the American political left.
Yeah, it's not the American political left. There are people that see this unraveling happening and they're like, okay, we're going to be the ones to take control after this is over. Now, when you even read the Apocalypse, it talks about like a beast, and the beast in the Apocalypse. And to me, that beast is really just a system of control. So the last beast was the Roman Empire. Now, what's supposed to come in the Apocalypse is this new system of control, which will be like the rise of the Roman Empire coming back. And that's kind of what I see happening right now. So it's just kind of weird that all like the fourth turning kind of lines up with some of the prophecies you see, some of the so Rob and I are constantly saying, like, we don't know if it's like the end of the world, but it's the end of something.
Now, to kind of get back to what Joseph said here, the graph, when it shows something like a high, right, and we think of it's
speaking strictly
the post World War II era immediately following, or if we think of the kind of the end of the 19th century as the high following the Civil War era, right? Like this high doesn't mean it's a good thing. It just means that's when social cohesion's at the highest. So if you're wondering, what do we define a crisis? Where do we define suffering? And, like you said, in America, we're not being murdered for our faith. Priests aren't being killed, not yet.
Okay,
right?
no, but look at what is happening. Look at what is happening. You're seeing, look, you're seeing the same playbook play out in the church that you're seeing in society. So you are seeing leaders from the top trying to cause division amongst the actual people who believe the faith. And they're trying to divide us between this left and right paradigm that you see in the culture.
crisis, when this theory talks about a crisis, it doesn't mean a period where bad things are happening, because then everything in American history has been a crisis, because America is a godless nation, always has been, right?
Yeah, they're speaking strictly secular.
They're saying social cohesion. So we're in a period of crisis when it comes to social cohesion. Things are falling apart. Whenever this ends, for the next period of high social
something new will come.
If say this crisis is ended in the left and the secular left wins, then that period of high social cohesion, that's going to be when you see suffering. That's going to be when you see actual persecution of Catholics in the West, is during that period of social cohesion, where
and the rebuilding left, in the first turning of the next section.
Right. Yeah. So just because it's high on the graph and it says high, and we equate those periods with good points in American history, that's just a high point of social cohesion. And that the enemy that everyone is united against could be us if we don't do something.
Yeah. Yeah. So like in America, that high point of social cohesion was, the Industrial Revolution. But if you go into Russia and you go into over there, what you're seeing is the Bolshevik Revolution. Right. So it's like, okay. So in America, you're seeing this high point for us. And we're like, oh, look, we're expanding. But you're seeing in Russia, you're seeing the Bolshevik Revolution. And you're seeing.
And that actually wasn't even the high point. The revolution that started in February of 1917, that was really the start of the crisis, right? Because then you had the February Revolution, then you had the October Revolution, which was the Bolshevik one, and then you had a period of about 7 to 10 years of civil war. And it was after that, with the rise of Stalin, that began the high point of social cohesion of Soviet communism.
So that's what Rob's trying to get at, is saying that, like, if we don't, depending on how we get through this crisis period, what comes next can either be a good thing or it could be a nightmare.
Right. And we have to recognize, like, I think conservatives, so-called, today, right, they think their job is to somehow conserve the social order we have now, instead of working for actual conservative values. And I think we have spent so much time just trying to hold back the water, hold back the dam, that we are going to get swept away. We have to, I think, recognize that this crisis period of things falling apart, things are going to fall apart one way or the other. It's just the nature of history. So why should we spend all our time trying to save something that's doomed, instead of actually working to build, like, say, a Catholic revival in this country, right?
What do you think the collapse looks like, though?
Bad. Very bad.
So the social cohesion thing is where I want to focus for a second, because it's just strange to me, this forced, it's like they're forcing us to not be cohesive right now. They're trying to divide us. And I see that same thing happening in the church. And they're trying to, it's almost like there's an intentional schism happening in the church right now, right? Like there's always been lib Caths, right? But never has it been where it's so bad that when you read some of the people who are in positions of, not even just the hierarchy, I'm talking about the people who speak on behalf, like when you read the Austin Ivories and that whole crew, like, they're happy to see things fall apart in the church. They're happy to see the things that actually would unite us.
They cheered for Traditionis Custodes.
Yeah, like to see
gleeful.
To see that, like, I really do think that there's something to the point of getting rid of the traditional mass. And it's not just a war on the traditional mass. Like, if you go to the Novus Ordo, but you're a faithful Catholic, this war is on you also. I don't like how people try to make this only about the traditional mass, because it's not. This is about traditional Orthodox teaching that's also on the block here. I mean, whether Francis specifically changed doctrine or not, he's signaling that he wants it to change, and he's giving everybody the impression that it's okay to press these buttons and
the hierarchy in general is, on one hand, pushing away the conservative side, the trads, the conservative Novus Ordo, and at the same time, they're doing nothing to bring back the left, right? I mean,
Yeah, they're not reining them in whatsoever.
they say something every once in a while that shows that they're not like they're not necessarily saying go schism, but they're not telling them to stop either. So it's like they're doing
the only
everything
breaks
they
that
can.
are applied. The only breaks that are applied are to the Orthodox side.
Yeah.
They're the only side that are being told you're the problem. Nobody says anything on the other end that they're the problem. Okay, what I'm hearing is that this is the time for us Catholic parents to raise up a new generation of saints. God help us truly. Absolutely, right? I mean, I guess that's always the case, but I really think we spoke about this in one of the last episodes. Like, everybody goes so crazy over that B16 when he was Ratzinger and he gave that radio interview. And he gives that radio interview and he's like, I see the future of the church. The church is not going to have some of the points of privilege that it has in society and all these things. And it's going to lose its prestige in the culture, and it's pretty much going to collapse. And then it will be rebuilt by the saints, but there'll be a more faithful set of people who, and even Francis says that, and he's like, oh yeah, the church of the poor. And he'll manipulate that to kind of fit his narrative. But really, that's just following the catechism of the Catholic Church. The catechism says that the church will suffer and follow our Lord into his passion, death, and resurrection. And that's just basically what we're going to see. So they will be the ones to carry us forward into the next turn, whether that is a triumph of the church or a persecution. Yeah, I think that's what Rob's saying. So this crisis period ends around 2030. And that's basically, you're either going to have this vision that the World Economic Forum has for us, or we have to come up with an alternative vision.
So I guess my prediction personally is we're too late, right? Even if, say, the whole I hate using the terms left and right because they're nearly meaningless, but say you have the whole conservatively minded side suddenly realize it and try to build something. I think it's too late. I think that too much is against us for this next turning. I mean, if you look at the chart, it showed the millennials were what, the hero generation this time around. I think the next social high will be a cohesion against those like us, Catholics, faithful Orthodox, even some of the more conservative based Protestants. I think we are going to be the enemy of the next turning. And so like Samantha was saying, our job is to raise up our children who according to the chart, so Zillennial Generation Z would be the next generation of artists. I think you see that with a lot of Gen Z, right? They're more kind of intellectual. They are more concerned with stuff like that.
They're almost revolting against, like, some of the like, even my son's friends are like, they loved Trump, not because they even knew anything about him, but just because he was like punk rock, it was like they were able to intuit that he was like bucking the system.
Yeah.
And it was just like upsetting things. And it's like, there was something to that they were able to intuit as young kids. And it was, and you're talking like they were like 12, 13 when Trump was in, it was like they were able to see that, like, this is punk. Like, we have to go against what the generation before us had.
Now, the generation after that, I think, which I think most people are calling Generation Alpha. I don't know if that's the official term yet or not, but so like my kids, they will be the next generation of prophets. So according to this theory, the last generation was the boomers. Now you might think, well, they weren't prophets, but if you look at the powerful elite today, look at Nancy Pelosi, look at Biden, look at this, that their generation on the left, they really are the prophets, more or less, of the crazy wokeness we have today, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones who ushered it in. They're the ones who kind of developed the first thoughts of it. And since then, it's just been implemented. So I think we have to raise our kids, or at least the age my kids will be, as the generation that will be then the generation to raise the next generation of heroes. Because if the boomers were the prophets and the boomers' kids are millennials, and we're supposed to be the heroes of this so-called generation, and I think we've largely failed, then our kids, our grandchildren will have to be that generation that finally bucks the woke high society that's coming into being here and tears that down and hopefully build something Catholic.
So Joe says, will it be a hot or a cold war? So that's why this title also had fifth generational warfare in it. So all right, what we're in right now is a cold war. And the way that warfare, all right, so if anybody that's been paying attention over the past few years understands, so what fifth generational warfare is just an informational war. And what's going on the past few years, okay, let's take the Nancy Pelosi husband Hammer story, right? Even look at that. That whole thing happens. Now they come out and they're like, okay, some crazy Trump MAGA guy broke into the house, attacks Paul Pelosi, and give us some story, but don't release any camera footage, nothing. And it leads to all these insane conspiracy theories. And part of that is because they want to cause so much confusion that the conspiracy theories come out. They want you to not know what's real. Yep. So during COVID, during the whole thing with Ukraine that's going on, all of this stuff, they're giving you so much bad information that you don't even know what to trust. You don't know what's real. Like they really have us bugging out that when something comes out, you're like, I don't even know if this is a real thing.
And even when you think you finally looked behind the curtain and found the truth, that was faked and was given to you too, probably.
Yeah, so like the Pelosi story, when you really get into it, what happened was, I mean, I don't even know what actually happened, right, but you could actually make the case that some deranged lunatic...
Probably nothing happened.
I think some deranged lunatic broke into Paul Pelosi's house. Paul Pelosi's an alcoholic. The guy's a drunk. He gets there and he's trying to tell the cops that this guy's here, come and help me, without cueing the guy in that he's saying that. So he's like, yeah, this guy's just here looking for my wife. They're like, do you know him? He's like, no, I don't know him. The guy's like, you know me. He's like, I know him. You know, like the guy's just hammered. I mean, look, this is a guy who got pulled over a few months ago for a DWI and he was annihilated drunk and they let him go. But it really does look like the conspiracies that were coming out is like Paul Pelosi was either in a drug deal or he was this guy was a male prostitute, things like that. Like our minds went ballistic because we're like, why won't they just show us the body cam footage? And especially because they had it. And I think they intentionally didn't show it to us because they wanted our minds to go crazy. They wanted us to go, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on here? Like, this is just too bananas. What is Paul Pelosi doing with this guy, you know?
I think we have moved beyond the whole notion of Cold War or hot war. Obviously, real violence can be used, with militaries and with weapons when needed. But, I mean, we live in a world where what's his name? Mark Zuckerberg was interviewed one time, and it was a very laid back interview. I mean, the revelations in it weren't anything crazy. He was talking about how like Facebook uses how they market different ads to different people, right? And how they'll create an ad and they'll create multiple versions with just the smallest changes, sometimes in color, sometimes in shapes, sometimes in like the color of like the subscribe button or the shape of it or whatnot. They change just the smallest things to see the different levels of engagement they get with this, and they can end up then figuring out what exact colors and shapes and sounds that are needed to to more or less make someone press on the damn thing.
Yeah,
right. And it's not if you're talking about a company, and not just one company, but really a whole section of industry and society that can manipulate people in that way. We're not talking just about ads. We're talking then about the ways in which they can subconsciously manipulate you politically and into who
So
you're
crazy.
listening to, who you trust, who you vote for.
Even the conversations we have, right? Like even the topics we debate are given to us to debate.
Yes, absolutely.
Like the whole trans thing, right? The whole gender thing, like all that stuff. Like if you are really that caught up in that fight, you are falling for the psyop. Like I understand this is definitely a danger, right? You have to be wary of what they're doing and stuff, but they're feeding that to us and they're amplifying it. And then we amplify it back as we're fighting it back against it. They give us the fight to have with each other.
And while you're doing that, what aren't you paying attention to? What aren't you listening to?
Exactly.
What aren't you doing for your own children and your own family?
Yeah, it's like I'm so sick of the libs of TikTok thing at this point. Like, it was interesting in the beginning. It's like, I can't believe they're doing this. Okay, so I'm in it. When I started, we checked their products. Ooh, sorry guys. Now we track our customers. So
there's an entire industry around customer information, and it's not about like where what your address is or what your phone number is so they can robocall you. It's about what buttons you press on the internet. You know what I mean? Like,
bro, it's Westworld. So if you watch Westworld was like this fictitious place where it had robots that were so realistic you thought they were human, and people would go there and you basically went there and there was no law. You could kill, men could do horrible things to women. It was just like a free for all when you went there. And people thought they were going there to have a good time, but in reality, what they were doing is they were studying the people that were going there, and they were catching all the information off of these people, and they were seeing how people would act in certain situations, and they would use that information, because information is what they're using to manipulate us at every single turn. They know how to get people riled up. So you look at the same stupid arguments over and over, and it's like, that's why I'm so done with the Sede Vacantes SSPX thing. It's like, I don't even care about these debates anymore. It's like, I'm pretty sure what's kind of funny is you and I have always seen eye to eye with a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like my son was asking me, he goes, because I was, we were talking about the channel, and he's like, do you and Rob ever like argue over like who has to do what? And I'm like, it's the weirdest thing.
We know where our strengths are.
We both have a role. We've never discussed them. Never once have you and I had okay, Rob, you do this and I'll do this. You know what you're good at. I know what I'm good at. And the two things just work well together, right? It's a really unique situation, because you kind of leave the growing the show by getting, pestering people to come on the show with us, and like you kind of leave that to me, and you're doing the thumbnails. It's so like crazy how well we formatted this thing, and we've never had a conversation, not one, right? Like we've never had one conversation where it's like, Anthony, I could use some help here. Or Rob, you're not doing this. Like, it's just so wild how we're both we click together in this thing, and we've never had a single argument. We've never, we both just know what we were supposed to do. I'm not even sure how we got on this topic.
I'm kind of wondering, what does this have to do with generation warfare?
So what? Oh, because I don't know either. No, but it shows you how, like, the way that they have us arguing, that I'm so done with the libs of TikTok thing. I'm so done. Wait, what is that? So that's when you know you've got to get yeah, definitely. Rob and I knew right away we were clicking, but it's really just like the arguments that people are having are I got love. You're such a jerk, Joe. Just so everybody knows, Joe's coming on Friday, and we're going to have a very, very fun conversation. I have a few topics we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about. Everybody thinks I'm a misogynist. Wait till you guys hear Joe's points of view. Which one of you is analyzing the user statistics and figuring out what is the best clickbait? All right. So Rob and I,
it's kind of
it's a very mutual thing. So Rob will send me an idea, and I'm like, it's too wordy.
What it usually is, you send the kind of the general idea.
Yeah, and then you kind of You manipulate it.
I tweak it. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob will fine tune it.
We're not Facebook. We don't get to put out 100 different ideas and see.
That's where this came from. Okay, that's where it was. So Facebook. Okay, that's how we got onto this. So
we have
Facebook
to do it the old school way.
We'll try a million things to try and manipulate you to see where it works, and it's just I totally forgot how I got onto that. That's so funny. It was Facebook, right? So so if we're gonna figure out a show topic, okay, so we're doing 4 shows this week, and so Rob threw like tomorrow night it's me and Robbie Brown, right? And Robbie Brown's he's a friend of the show. He's black, and the last time he came on, he got pretty heated about a topic that it was like what did he just say? Who was that? Jason or
I've actually talked a fair amount this episode.
Rob's talked a majority of this episode. So Robbie Brown's coming on, and last time Robbie was on, he had some things to say about like the trad community and stuff. So I said, okay, what do we want to name tomorrow night's episode? What do we go with? What do we land with?
What was it? All are welcome, or are they? Something like how to
step out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, how to step out of our comfort zone.
How to step out of our comfort zone.
Out of our trad comfort zone.
Yeah, so it's like, look, there's going to be things that Robbie tells us tomorrow that a lot of us like. You have to realize there are people that don't think in a monolith, you know. So Rob and I went back and forth a few times on what should the title be. And I had like a general idea of what I wanted, but Rob came down with the final analysis. Same thing for Friday. So
this subject or area of subjects is touchy, right? I mean, on both directions. So we wanted to kind of steer it in what's going to be a productive direction. Now you all know how often we stick to our titles, so I'm a little worried. So
it started off. It was like it was pretty harsh, right? It was like how do we open the trad community to the black community, like things like that. Like we're just like trying to play around with it. It's like how do you even introduce this topic the way it is? So then now Friday night is going to be off the rails, and Joe Boca is going to be at my house for it. And we were trying to say, okay, so what do we want to do for the off the rails episode on? Yeah, hurry up, Steven. So
Steven is one of our special guests tonight. I don't know if the other one's going to show, but we'll see.
No, it's not. Jeremiah is not coming.
Steven, we got like 45 minutes easily.
So Friday night show is off the rails, and we're like, okay, so what are we going to do for Friday night? I'm like, let's go clickbaity for Friday night just to get people to tune in, because we know once we get them, they'll be interested. And you just need the title to be something you at least discuss for a second, and then who cares where the conversation goes, as long as you bring it up in the beginning. And I figured we would start the conversation off with the Synod, because I want to talk about where does Don's asking is another laundry night. I guarantee Joe shows up with laundry. Joe comes by with a bag of laundry. He's like, yo, can I use your laundry? Can I use your washer and dryer? It's like, my wife's not home, I don't care what you do. So Friday night we're going to begin speaking about the Synod, but I promise you that could last 3 minutes.
Teresa, it's going to be at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern. And then, so tomorrow night will be same thing. 8 p.m. We go for an 8 p.m. Eastern start because that kind of works.
Yeah.
Rob's just getting home from work, and if I go later, I'll never make it. Like I have to wake up at 4 a.m. So
and actually the Synod and what we'll probably be discussing with that is Barron's comments about how the whole diversity and inclusivity thing maybe has gone too far, but like that's a good topic after tomorrow night, especially because like tomorrow night is going to be a discussion of how can we be inclusive in like the true good Catholic way.
Yeah,
how does that compare to the inclusivity of opening the church to people who have no desire to repent?
No, what Robbie and I will discuss is actual evangelization. How do we bring people into the trad community? That's what I want to talk to him, because Robbie has a very unique perspective, and he made some comments. He's like, yo, come on, man. Like, this is like very white suburban way of thinking, you know? And it was like, okay, well, I'm a very white suburban guy. Like That's the environment I grew up in. So if Robbie knows something I don't, I want to talk to him about it. And I want to ask him. I would like to get that perspective. And I'm not. What's funny is when you hear liberals talk about race, they try to use certain populations as like a pet to them. And they're like, what can we do to be an ally? Like, that's not, Robbie's my friend. Like, me and Robbie are going to have like a legit conversation. It's like, Robbie, what am I missing here? Tell me if I'm missing something. And wait, aren't you Italian? Yeah. And we all know about the Moors in Sicily. So, so I think that's why it'll work with me and Robbie.
You knew enough to say that.
No.
Look who it is.
No freaking way. I just got done saying there's no way this guy's gonna pop in.
And I didn't even hear that either.
I
just rolled in. I just rolled in to roll in.
Just got done saying, yeah, Taylor guy's bailing on us tonight.
Yeah. Dude, you thought I was ghosting you, man.
100%.
You're like, oh, he's ghosting me. I'm not ghosting. What you talking about?
I'll tell you why.
Why?
I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because I message you and I don't get a response. All I get is a little click with the 100 on it.
That's true. That's true. Well, and it kind of depends, man. I was gone for 3 months. I was basically offline, and so I wasn't responding to hardly anybody. But in fairness, that's true. If you give somebody a 100 or something, that's like the thumbs up button on Facebook. Like, you send somebody a message, a heartfelt message, and it's like you get the thumbs up back. You're just kind of, it's like offensive almost, a little bit offensive. So, okay, I'll grant that. And what's up, prepping for heaven? It's good to see you.
Yeah, a lot of you guys don't know, but Jeremiah was the first interview I had. Yeah. So if you guys, especially new people, if you guys want to go back and watch a guy who's like,
if you want to watch
nervous, yeah, I cried in that interview, but I was so nervous. And me and Jeremiah talked on the phone for like an hour before he actually came on. It was like I was very green at that time. So, Jeremiah, how is the book? What's going on with the book, bud?
It's doing good. It's done, but the thing is that so my sister hopped on board editing, and that was a huge breakthrough. That was awesome because I can give it my best, Tim can give it his best, but my sister is maybe the best. She's just amazing. I didn't realize how amazing she was until we started working together, and it was really good. We got through it all. And, she got through the book the first time we went through it and made some change, a lot of changes actually that were excellent. All of them made them better. But then it got to the point where once it was done, it was now like we have to get back to things like periods and commas and quotation marks. Are they backward?
All the boring stuff.
The boring stuff, and maybe catching things you didn't catch the first time through. Well, I didn't hear from her for like 2 weeks because that's outside my control. That's on her. And then I would take whatever edits she suggests, and I make my call on that. So I was waiting on her, and we talked. Not this past weekend, the weekend prior, we talked, and she was embarrassed and she called me crying because she said, "I have to tell you the truth." She said, "I am really struggling to read your stuff at all." She said, "Because I'm having a hard time seeing." And so my sister's cancer, for people who don't know, my sister has been battling with terminal breast cancer for 4 years now. She's been doing amazing. She has 50 tumor markers in her brain. So can
I stop you?
Of course, yeah.
What's that like going from watching your daughter pass from cancer to watching your sister pass from cancer?
Well, she hasn't passed, but to fight it, but to be diagnosed.
Watching your sister go through the same struggle that you watched her, right? So, yeah. I mean, your sister is struggling hard right now, right? Her vision's gone. I'll tell you, the past year you've been kind of warning us, like my sister's really in a rough spot right now. So I'm just saying, like, to watch your daughter go through that, and then to watch your sister go through something similar.
It's absolutely terrible. I mean, I remember getting the phone call about it, and hearing and saying like. Because my daughter had died not long before. I mean, maybe, about a year, less than a year. And my sister, and not only did we find out while she's pregnant because she thought it was a milk duct that was clogged. And so, and all of her friends were like, "Oh no, it's a milk duct." And my sister's like, "Yeah, but it really hurts." And they're like, yeah, it'll work itself out and stuff. She finally went in, size of an avocado, man. Cancer. Yep, wicked bad. It was not at that point, it flooded all through her body. So I mean, she's had it all through our different parts of her body, lungs, neck, back, hips, brain, all over her neck. She had where you could see it, like beads on her neck, right? I mean, it was dreadful. But she's really diligent about the protocol. So she'll and then she'll kind of fall off the bandwagon, and then she'll get back on, and then she falls off. But it's Herculean. Right, it's like Olympian.
Yeah, she has pulled through longer than your daughter did.
Oh, way longer. Yeah. So yeah, my daughter, she had a kind. It was different kinds of cancer, right?
Yep.
But the kind that my daughter had, I mean, that's particularly brutal. They're all brutal, and the treatment plans we went with were different. So we went with different things, But it was really hard, actually. And in the book, I was going through, and there's a chapter where I'm going through saying that, the things that kind of on our way out of atheism, what were events in our life that was tearing things away and really just driving us to our knees.
Where's your sister's faith life? Where's your sister at? Is your sister in the church or?
Always. Yeah. My sister, she's always been very faithful. She was the one growing up who would have, well, look at this. Look at this guy. And shaved face, man, since the last time I saw you.
Yeah, I don't like it.
What is happening with this? I barely recognized you.
I'm not on the army
years
yet.
old.
Yeah, I know.
A Boy Scout.
Yeah. What are you doing with that shaved face? Stop it. You're making me look old.
You are.
Yeah.
Sorry for looking good.
Jeremiah, I'm gonna actually bring you back on, and we're gonna get an update on your book. We're gonna get an update on your sister. Yeah. We'll get an update.
Well, the update on the book is just simply that now I'm back in the driver's seat because I was out of it. But now the only way that she's going to be able to really complete it all the way through is with assistance. It's going to take time, or if I read it. And so, but her name's on the cover as the editor. She's done an amazing job. It's a dream come true for her to even do this at all. So there's no doubt we're crossing that line together. So, but that's where it is now. So we're pumped. It's amazing, and it's going to be an amazing story. Even just the process of publishing it itself is an amazing story in its own right.
You've always been like, I don't know. First off, somebody I look up to, somebody I've asked for advice on things. You've always been there anytime I needed you. You were my first interview. So if there's anything ever I could do to help, please reach out to us, man.
We're first interview?
He was my first interview. My first interview was Jeremiah.
Same with Tim. Same with Flanders. I was Flanders' first interview.
Yeah,
I think I've actually been a bunch of people's first interviews. I think and they've mentioned that they're like, dude, I think you're like a really good first interview. And I'm like, probably because I'm easygoing, and I've been in the opposite side. I've been where I was a new host and having to talk to people, and I've dealt with people who were nervous coming into radio stations or TV studios, and they're really nervous to talk to you, and you got to just work with them.
I think it's your broadcast history that makes you so easy to talk to. Like you are a broadcast guy, and you definitely set me at ease. Like before, like just talking to you definitely set me at ease. And you were the first person I talked to, and I thought every interview was going to go that well. I have shows with my friend Joe that we pre-recorded that I never released because they were so bad.
Really?
They were so bad that I never released them. And it was because I was so expecting them to go as easy as it was the conversation with you. And it was just, I was flailing. And I was like,
if I did that, I wouldn't have deleted them in StreamYard.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
I would have saved them and released them.
Dude, when I tell you bad, there was a couple of clips that were good, but it was a lot of awkwardness. And I was like, whoa, I'm not as good at this as I thought I was. Like, I thought I was really good at this because you were really good. And it was like, I thought I could just wing it.
I'm good as a guest. I'm good as a guest, but as a host, I've always struggled, man. I mean, I'm a blabbermouth. My mom saved, for whatever reason, she decided she wanted to save all of my report cards from when I was young. We're talking kindergarten all the way through. And it's embarrassing already, but you read it and you see the notes, and it's always the same about your son is a very intelligent young man. very smart. He can learn very quickly, but he gets bored really quick, and he talks a lot. He doesn't stop talking. You can tell him, please stop. So all my life, I've struggled with this. I decided to make it a job, right? That says, well, if I'm going to struggle, I'm going to make it a career. Then I can wear it as a badge of honor and say, yeah, I do talk radio or whatever. But like when it comes to interviewing, there's a certain skill set, man. I think I've mentioned before, I think Angela Erickson's a really good example. I think Tim Flanders is a good example. I think Tim Flanders is an excellent example of somebody who can ask a question to an individual.
He's a robot.
Let him go. Just let
He's
it go.
a robot. I gotta be honest.
Yeah.
I asked Tim one time because, like, I like to like get down to like I like breaking down the fifth wall a little bit.
Yeah.
So I remember I had Tim one time. I'm like, Tim, my first bunch of times doing this, I was a nervous wreck. I'm like, how long did it take you to like feel comfortable behind a camera? You know, he goes, first time. Yeah, I was a teacher, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many times my first time. Listen, nobody.
Yeah, but go back and watch it. Go back and.
Oh, they were
watch.
terrible. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're wicked bad. I remember I talked to a man. I'm like the lighting guy behind the scenes. People at the network know, right?
All of this lighting behind me.
The lighting suggestions, right? Like, so I'm like the guy that you talk to. Well, Tim, I remember, man, early on. I mean, he's always been the suit and tie guy, right? Looking like a man in black kind of thing. And so he was wearing the black suits, the black tie, and the white outfit. He had the black framed glasses, and he was looking down at the camera because the camera was like an iPad or something. He's looking down, and the light's like a bump. It's this daunting thing, man. Like, I mean, it's like
that's what he learned at the agency.
Yeah, it's like all dark around. It does. It's what it looks like. I said, man, you're not helping yourself with that.
We had our methods to get him onto the scene. We had our methods. Don't question it.
Yeah.
Don't question it.
He backed out, and he had a light on him, man, that was wicked bad. I don't know what kind of bulb or what it was, but it had to be just right on him because it was bright as the sun. And it was just reflecting. I mean, if I get really close, see that?
Yeah, I need to powder my face. See how shiny I am?
Imagine, like, if I get back here, see the flesh, it looks fleshy. If I go up here, man, that was like his face like this. And I said, homie.
Yeah, my first conversation with Jeremiah was all about lighting. And he's like, look, you have, what do you call that with the nose, with the shadow on the nose?
Rembrandt.
Yeah, you're Rembrandt. See, I'm like Jeremiah, I don't know.
Right here? That's
I don't think I'm ever going to be that professional, bro. Listen, my first show, okay, nobody knows this. My first show, I get a bottle of wine, I get the camera out, and I'm like,
set the lights real low, light the candles.
I guzzle 2 glasses of wine, I turn the camera on, and I'm like, what am I going to say? I didn't even have a clue.
Yeah.
So if you watch my first 3 shows, or maybe 4 shows, before interviews, like I did 3 or 4 shows solo, I wrote them out and I'm reading. I'm literally reading what I wrote the entire show out. So I'm reading what I wrote. Like some of them are on typology and things like that. And I'm like, I didn't know where I wanted to go with this thing. I had no idea. And then I did the interview with you and I had such a good time talking to you that I went, that's what I got to do. I'm good at having a conversation with people. Like that's, and then my first time I had on Rob for the trivia show, I clicked with Rob so well. I go, dude, I just wanted a partner. Like I just work well with a partner. Me and Rob riff with each other well, and that was the route we took, and here we are. So I won't bore everybody with it, but yeah. Listen, let's get to fourth turning.
The fourth turning. I thought you guys talked about this last night or whatever.
No, this was tonight. So we kind of went over what the fourth turning is. Now, Jeremiah, you love that book, right?
Well, I appreciate it, and it has helped to inform some of the ways that I see and view civilizational similarities, right? So similarities between various civilizations, the way that they are birthed, the way that they develop, the way they mature, the things within them that make them strong, how that changes, the shifts, and the way that makes people think. So in that book, I find that I have a number of criticisms, and I've talked about them back when I was with Holy Faith Media, because the guys that write the book, they're not coming from our paradigm, right? So for them, when they're talking about the seculum and they're the hand breath, right? The kind of a generational span. So let's say 80 to 100 years. When they're talking about that, they may have a lot that they can point to that would show similarities on various charts and show how things go. Even the emergence of revolutionary characters or kind of visionary people within different things. But these guys, essentially, because they lack a Trinitarian relational God of providence and history, they're essentially fatalistic. So at the end of the day, your job, they're great up through a whole bunch saying that, your generations tend to have certain qualities or characteristics. It doesn't mean all of them. They have their own disagreements within themselves, but there's, that kind of thing. And they spot that and they use that for the generalities of it all. But because it's fatalistic, the question comes up, what do you do? And the answer that they had was kind of like, well, where do you fit in this cycle? Where do you fit in that? And wherever you fit, do your best. I'm like, okay, like, oh, so there's an active volcano here. What am I dancing on it for? And it's like, because other people have danced before a certain number of years ago. And you're like, okay, is there like a destiny? Is there like a final cause? No, this is more like Valhalla. It just repeats itself over and over. And you're like, and I'm supposed to do what? And they're like, the same thing everybody did before. And you're
Good luck.
okay, good luck with it.
Okay, so real quick, I do have to say something. So Stephen, we asked Stephen to come on. Stephen, why don't you tell everybody tell whatever you're allowed to tell about your background?
Oh, I mean, I'm not anyone special. I'm a outgoing Army intelligence officer. I'm in the Minnesota National Guard up here.
He's a Fed.
Tim Flanders Handler.
Yeah.
He's a Fed. Okay,
yeah, I'm CIA. We put Tim on the scene. Jay Dyer figured us out. It's over. No, I'm kidding. No. So I was really excited when you said that you were gonna have Jeremiah on tonight because Jeremiah's background. Well, I love you guys. I love you guys. I'm just bad at trivia.
No.
So. Having Jeremiah on tonight and talking about the fourth turning and the kind of the fifth generational warfare, cyberspace, all that, it's a really interesting intersection, I think. And Jeremiah and I have talked a lot about this on live chats, on Telegram, and just kind of sidebar stuff. My background, I studied psychology in my undergrad, which might not sound all that interesting. But it was essentially around the history of the development of the modern paradigm of psychology, which is obviously heavily influenced by Sigmund Freud, but also not a ton of people know. More people are figuring out, more people are reading up on the fact that Edward Bernays, who was this behind the scenes giant of a man, but yet behind the scenes, who really was the pioneer of modern public relations, or for lack of a better term, propaganda, by partially by extrapolating a lot of Uncle Ziggy's how the documentary puts it, what's it called, Century of the Self, I think is a good one to watch. Uncle Ziggy's
it's amazing
theories.
And yes, you're right.
Yeah,
that's what it's called. Yeah, it's amazing.
You can smoke that vape on screen. We're not on Meaning of Catholic, bro. Just come on screen and smoke the vape with us. I use mine all show.
This is a space of acceptance. Where's
You're
mine?
in a
I'm
safe
just
space,
kidding.
bro.
Yeah, but anyway, so I wrote it wasn't even really a true like thesis. It was a capstone paper, right? And my focus was on Edward Bernays and his influence as the, like I said, modern father, pioneer of modern propaganda, and how that influenced both the commercial sector, which is more what the documentary focuses on, but also how that ties in actually more and more how his legacy is felt in modern day intelligence and psychological operations by way of military purposes.
It didn't focus on his work for the United Fruit Company and the overthrow of the Guatemalan government.
I mean, it did, but like,
right.
That's the obvious stuff.
Right.
What I've been able to, and even since then, extrapolate from that study is essentially how it has influenced the use of psychological operations, you know, by way of cyberspace today. It like the foundations of that are completely tied to what we were just mentioning with Edward Bernays, and without that, you really can't have the ability to, or essentially the century-long study of how to manipulate the populace to completely control what they think, how they act, what they're going to buy, how they're going to react, like how they're going to take a narrative and run with it, and how it's going to shape their lives.
Over the past couple of years, we've seen an insane amount of psyops. Like on a level like I mean, these things were going on forever, right? And I think most of us were oblivious to it and we didn't notice it. And then once like Trump came in, it was like they were just like, we're going to throw these things right in your face.
I'm an old man, dude. I've been aware. I grew up in a very paranoid home.
Well, and the reason why
talking sovereign citizenship and psyops, man, since like 91.
The reason why I was excited for you guys to have Jeremiah on to talk about this is specifically because of his background, his education background in media theory and journalism, and his understanding of the essentially the tactical application of a lot of these concepts that hopefully we'll talk about tonight. But that is,
I know.
Yeah. Right, and it's all completely related, and completely related to IIA, interactive internet activities, which is essentially influencing the narrative shaping and shifting and deployment of said narratives by way of not just the mainstream media, but so many of the alt media stars that we look to for information on a regular basis today.
I just want to say something.
It's remarkable.
So let me just tell you where my brain is at. So when I watched, when 9/11 happens, let's see, 01, I'm 20 years old, right? All right, so 2000.
Just old enough
19.
to sell American flags on the street corner for profit.
So that's a story I told on air.
I'm listening. I'll be right back.
Yeah. I was 19 years old when 9/11 happens. When I tell you I bought the narrative hook, line, and sinker, I'm like, like 100% on board with whatever the media told us these were. Now, you fast forward to COVID, and I'm like, I don't know what to think about 9/11. Like, I have no idea. Like, there's no way the narrative they sold us is what happened. I don't know what happened. I'm not a 50, what was that? The loose change truther guy. I don't know what happened, but there's no way I'm buying that narrative that they sold us, because I see the way media is manipulating our minds every day. Now, to speak to somebody like Steven, who's he's on his way out as an ex-Intel agent, it's like, how in the know are you, Steven, on some of these psyops?
So not much, right? So like, complete disclaimer, right? Like my background is completely in the tactical maneuver space in the army,
like dropping pamphlets for Iraqis, things like that.
No, not even that. Like, hey, like our armor and infantry and artillery is, what are they going to face? What's the enemy going to do? Based on terrain and how are they going to move in time and space, like extremely nitty gritty tactical. Like, if you want to talk Russian tactics, like, I'm game all day. The study, though, and the understanding of, at the basic conceptual level of these higher level strategic things, like it's a combination of a little bit of formal background and education, which is, really led to my own personal, research, and enough of an interest to where I've been able to connect with people both inside of the community, presently, and inside the, both the intelligence community, like civilian and military side, and then outside of the community, and people that were either former intelligence operatives or agents or what have you, or things of that nature, contractors, what have you. I've been able to really network extremely well, and I've gained so much insights by just talking to people, because a lot of the people that know stuff aren't approached, and they might have been out of the game for 10 or 20 years, but they're obviously still somewhat connected, and they're willing to talk about it. And a lot of the time, these are the people that are left out. Only in the last 2 years have people like J.R. Nyquist come back on the scene. He wasn't even involved in the intelligence community.
Yeah.
He just read all the Soviet defector literature and interacted with all these people.
Sometimes you'll send us videos of things, and I'm just like, "What am I watching right now?" Right? Like
Right.
you're sending us some some deep intel stuff. I'm like, "Whoa!"
Everyone and their mother knows about Anthony Galitzin, right? He wrote the book, done all that, and a lot of people have read his stuff. But the fact of the matter is that there's 40, 50, 60, 70 people just like him, completely corroborating his information, and no one read it. No one cared. No one took the time. And there's literally like 5 people on the planet right now that did. And now people are starting to pay attention, because it's like, oh,
we're
WEF is just completely a communist front organization. And maybe
so
Putin
Jeremiah, you're a few years older than me, right?
Yeah.
So you're what, 44?
I'll be 45 in March.
Okay, so March what?
27th.
The 16th. I think it was the same birthday. All right, so now when 9/11 happens, you're 23?
Yes.
What's your opinion of it when it happens?
I was fanatical. Like I was already signed in to the military, so I'd already depped in, and then this happened, and it was just from that point on, it was a fervent, strident resolve, and it was an immediate us them. It affected my language. It affected my vision of myself and ideas of freedom and rights and our place in the world. And I went in, signed into the Navy. I was actually signing in on 9/11 when that happened.
Whoa, what? Oh, that's right. You're a vet.
You're a veteran, dude. I'm a disabled veteran.
You got it. So wait. Oh, stop. Slow down. Stop.
It's gonna be a 4-hour show, guys.
I'm sorry, guys. I know it's getting late. So you're in the military before 9/11 happens?
I was signing in at MEPS in Lansing on 9/11. So on 9/10, my senior chief picked me up, drives me over to MEPS. I spend the night at the hotel nearby. You wake up early in the morning. I'd already done my D-Lab for a crypto tech interpreter as a crazy test, but I'd already done that. I was just in the signing in phase for CTI, qualified for it. And so
getting ready for the Underwear Olympics.
That's what I was going to do. Yeah. So I'm sitting there and getting ready to do my thing, and signed halfway through the paperwork. I mean, there's a decent amount, not overwhelming, but it's a decent amount, probably halfway through. And all of a sudden, some girl in the other room, man, just screams, and everybody's scared. I mean, it's like an overwhelming thing. It's like, startling. People run to this room and they're all watching, and there's Twin Towers, right? So that's where I was. They put us on lockdown for 72 hours. We're on code red. For 72, we could not leave, could not go home. We had to stay at the hotel. So we're in the same clothes. You know what I mean? It was a terrible thing. We had to make a decision, though. So you had to decide, because it was at that point. So that's long story short, right? That's how I got in. That's how it affected me. And it wasn't until the questions pertaining to Iraq, because I'm also old enough to remember that, like the original, like going over there. And so old enough to remember eating dinner and sitting around and watching Schwarzkopf and others, on TV and stuff. I remember following that and the feelings and the conversations we had after that, as well as the conversations we had about our role in the world with Perot and other things. So when Iraq started getting on the radar, it was really confusing to me because I didn't sign in for that. You know, I believed the narrative, but that narrative was a big change all of a sudden.
So you weren't falling for the "we found weapons of mass destruction" thing?
I did it first. Oh yeah. Well, nowadays, no.
Not now, but when it happened.
When it first happened, and they said there was yellow cake, I believe there was yellow cake. Well,
not just that.
For like a nanosecond.
You have to remember
MARS.
Yeah.
You have to remember how out for blood we were at this time.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
do you guys know the origins of that story of how that report, like how that narrative even came to be?
No.
What, with the weapons of mass destruction?
That was a bunk report. I'm pretty sure it was written in the 90s. Don't quote me on that.
But Stephen, you're missing something. We wouldn't have cared at the time.
Correct.
We just wanted
they dug it up.
After.
They dug it up.
Yeah,
we
would not have cared. Like, I'm telling you, you don't remember how badly we wanted revenge for 9/11. We would have bombed anybody brown at that point.
And Project for New American Century had been on it for quite a while. Like you had high profile people on the left and on the right, neoconservative and neoliberal, who agreed on the interventionist Team America World Police model of, foreign affairs. And so they'd been wanting to get involved in that theater for quite some time. And this was an opportunity, and the same players, the same people who were involved in the drafting of different documents pertaining to the advocacy of such a war were the same ones at the helm once we were there. Like they weren't just like on the sidelines. They were actually like flooding the place. Yeah. It was crawling with them. So but once it got to that point, I was asking questions because I'm like, it felt strange to me. I understood from my acceptance of the narrative. I understood what we were doing in Afghanistan. I could at least make sense of that. I could not make sense of this shift. And I started really wondering about it.
At what point? At what point?
When it became clear that we were going to go into Iraq. In fact, when I saw, I was out by that time anyway, it didn't matter. But when I saw I'm glad that I was out at that time because when I saw shock and awe, it was a troubling thing. And I know I mentioned this a lot. I mentioned this person a lot, maybe his biggest advocate on the planet. But Ronald Knox, Ronald Knox, but he was around when the bomb, when during World War II, and that really messed with him badly. Like for the rest of his life, he said that it changed things. Like you could not, there was a line you crossed at that point, and it said something to humans about what we can do even to ourselves and stuff.
Fulton Sheen talks about this too.
Yeah,
Fulton Sheen talks about the second we dropped the bomb, we eliminated any lines of human decency that were left. From that point on, it was fair game.
Jonathan Pageau, I just sent this video to Rob the other day. He did a whole video on how the entire modern culture that we have is based upon the narrative of World War II, and that Hiroshima was actually a scapegoat scenario where
a human sacrifice.
A human sacrifice. And it was like a scapegoat scenario. So like human beings are very funny how we will put the load of guilt upon a victim. And it's from the Old Testament. We have a scapegoat. And it was like after World War II, we made Japan the scapegoat for all of the atrocities we did. And then and all those trials for the Nazis afterward, and we base our whole culture based upon the atrocities of World War II.
It's the genesis of modernity. It is completely anything beyond World War II is like this distant
another world.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
We talk all the time about how you only hear a very particular narrative coming from World War II. You never hear about the atrocities of Stalin and the communists. You only hear about the Nazis and that thing. And it's a very strange thing because people don't realize how horrific Stalin was.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Hitler was horrific, but not many people really know how horrible Stalin was.
Or even how afterward
right.
the Poles and Ukrainians slaughtered each other. No, not governments, just citizens slaughtered each other within the Eastern Bloc for like a few years after World War II. And
well, and I mean, even before, I mean, it was a solid 30-year period, you know, on and off. But there's a 30-year period leading up to World War II where essentially all of Eastern Europe was constantly either in conflict or about to be, like,
or being starved to death.
Correct, and that's a perfect point. The outright ignorance of the suffering of the Slavs as a whole. It's, I mean, that in and of itself, the ignorance of that is a shame that history is going to judge us very harshly for our lack of attention to that, because it's actually playing into the geopolitical situation of today. I mean, that animosity doesn't just like stop then and there. It's a multi-generational thing, and now we have it all welling up again.
Jeremiah's about to take a sip of his Mountain Dew. I'm sorry, I had to put this up.
A sip. A sip. I'm taking it to another level.
Straight to the dome.
Straight to the dome.
Guys, I have to get off in 10 minutes. So whatever we want to get out, we have to get out in the next 10 minutes because my wife is leaving for South Carolina in the morning, and I have to actually go and spend a little time.
I'll wrap up what I was saying about Fourth Turning. I'll do that. Yeah. Right. So the Fourth Turning, I got the book by accident, actually. It was unintentional. It was intentional to get the book, but I wasn't intending to get this one. Actually, Jay Dyer, it talked to me. It was a book he was referencing about Symphonia. And I reached out to him because I know him on a personal level, kind of. And so I reached out to him and he told me what book it was. So I looked it up and I thought I remembered. I'm like, oh, I think I saw that book. And so I went on and the one that was in my memory, and I thought that was this. And so instead of just confirming it and going back to check and say, is that what he said? Instead, I got this, and I got it. I sent him a message. I'm like, dude, this book is pretty awesome, man. I was kind of surprised he was down with it a little, but I was like, surprised because he's like, it's a big influence on him and stuff. And I told him what it was, and he's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about with this? And so, but it's one of those things that to me, if somebody has a view of history that is, purely conspiratorial, I think it's a problem. I think it's a problem if there's no room for conspiracy at all. I think it's a problem if it's purely linear without any kind of liturgical, cyclical dynamic to it. I think there's too many recurring patterns and behaviors, and even just generational similarities. The things like this. It's not fatalism. It just says there's a good reason why we say that we ought to learn from the past. I think it's weird.
Well, all right, so
we say that, and then I
want to bring something up because I spoke about this earlier. So I brought up the Mark Twain quote: "History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme." And if you look in the earliest 20th century, you see a lot of the patterns that you're seeing now. So you see you had the Spanish flu pandemic, then you have World War I, then you see a Great Depression, then you see World War II come up. Now you're seeing some of these patterns come up again. Now, is this because it's a fourth turning thing, or is this just because this is the way reality reveals itself to us, and that the same things just kind of happen over and over again throughout human history? Because it seems like some of the crisis that we're in now is manufactured. And it's not some natural occurrence that's going on. It seems very manufactured, like they're doing things to make it so that our society is no longer cohesive.
Yeah, but no matter what, I'd say this. I'd say no matter what, God is a God of history. He is a God of providential control, his permissive will, decorative will, having to do with history, and that we have choices to make. And yet, paradoxically, mysteriously, he already knows. He's at the end from the beginning from the end. There's nothing. He's not biting his nails. He's not taken by surprise. Nothing like that. And we live in a world where on the one hand, we're moving forward, we're getting older and everything else. And yet at the same time, we're saying things like, man, I feel like my dad, and my dad said that too. And my dad's dad said that too. And so even on a very small level, then you expand it out and you say, you can see the way that it plays out through seasons and through orbits and different things, all around that says there's a reason. There's a season for this and a season for that. It's even in our scriptures in Ecclesiastes. And so you say, it seems as though there are seasons for these things, but we have a responsibility. We have and a role to play. And I think because they lack the Christological element of this, they don't have a cosmic view of Christ and the Logos. So like with a Catholic person, they could say, well, yeah, it's spiral in the sense that Christmas comes around again, right? We're going to celebrate again, but it's not the same one, but it is the same one, right? We are on the one hand participating in something 2,000 years old. On the other hand, we're 2,000 years away, which is why we have to participate in it. So we have on the one hand a participation, something that is a recognition of a incorporation, a layering, but yet it's different than it was back then. Even that's not the exact same because you weren't there. You are now because you're here. So like, it's never going to be, from a Catholic point of view, you can't have a purely cyclical. We can't do it since Augustine wiped it out, right? We absorb that. But the idea that it's purely linear and purely without any kind of spiral, any kind of, what do you want to call it? I think that misses a whole bunch of things too. I think it misses not only accurate descriptions of how things tend to play out, but also tends to the idea that if you don't want to give it credit for its existence, the idea is that it just happens to be this way, like an accidental understanding of history. And in doing that, I would ask the question, say, so does that model at all have any role that God plays in the management and overseeing and of nations at all? Like, if we take God out of that and we just say, well, it just happens to work out that way, and that's all this is, then we're talking the rise and fall of nations and peoples, entire groups. And if that's just purely coincidental or accidental, right? There's some serious questions that we would have to ask. So both sides, if you push too hard on the fatalistic side, you're obviously going to have major problems, huge, gigantic ones. Too far in the opposite direction, major time problems. And so for me, I think there's a good fusion of the two. And you can see that not only, and this is the end, fourth turning, decline of the West. I don't endorse the entirety of any of the books that I'm going to say.
Yeah, they're secular books, right?
They're secular
books, but you can still pull information from secular books that may fit. So
no, totally. And, I mean, especially about history and things like that, political theory. If I'm not going to go to a priest necessarily for political theory, right? Like I'm going to go to a guy who's actually gone to school for that. But I wouldn't gone.
You're not reading the writings of a saint. You're reading
That's and really I wouldn't go to an economist either. I wouldn't go to an economist necessarily for my moral and spiritual direction. Like there's different things that people go to school for and they learn and everything. So those two books and the absolute most controversial recommendation I've ever given in my life, and I will proudly give it over and over again for people to have a good understanding of ideas regarding the birth, the maturation, and the decline and eventual death of civilizations and groups in history. I think two books. One is Righteous Mind. That's not necessarily as controversial, although people would have to be able to deal with some of his more Darwinistic views in some of his views in this. But Imperium by Philip Yaki. I think that Parker Yaki, that it's that book Imperium he's an extremely controversial figure, is mysterious, in fact, strange, maybe even an asset to enemies. There's all these things that are involved with him. Died at a young age. We're not sure if he was killed, suicide, cyanide. What was it? How did his, even the end of his life is weird. Wrote this book with no notes in this weird remote place overseas. So a curious character, but the book itself, the way that it describes nations and civilizations in these models, I think it is very useful to inform a Catholic understanding, not to determine it, but to inform it.
I completely agree with what Jeremiah was saying, and this will be my last piece. We were talking in the Terror Demons chat. Rob was definitely there, and I posted a couple things, and someone was like, "Really, you give this guy credence?" I'm like, "Listen, it's not to dictate, it's to inform." Basically, what Jeremiah was saying, and we need, as traditional Catholics, myself falling kind of within that circle, for lack of a better term. Like, we need to become better at understanding that we can't be purists in every single sense or in single thing that we intake. We need to understand what to take in to inform our worldview and to inform us on the present situation, whatever it may be, and to sift out what is clearly against the church and its precepts and what Christ's will is for us as Christians. We are getting into this this purity spiral, as Gordon will call it, and it is completely throwing us off. There's so much critical and useful information out there, a lot of what Jeremiah was just talking about, but I completely agree that to kind of wrap up my perspective.
And Michael's right in the comments saying that a lot of their predictions are right. Not all of them, but
because they wrote this in like what, 97.
Yep.
So they were pretty right on with what came after.
Yeah, I'll say this to Steven's point. It's like some of the purity spiraling is crazy. Like I'll tell you, if you guys knew the friendships that I have made over the past year and a half with Rob and all the guys that have, like, some of the things, like, you don't need to agree with everybody on everything. You really don't. You need to just recognize that you really need to recognize somebody who's of goodwill. Like, there's a difference in a left Cath who wants the church to change its teaching and guys who want the church's teaching to remain orthodox but have a different perspective. There's a very big difference there, right? Like there are guys who are very confused right now because of a lot of the things that are going on, but we're still men of goodwill and women of goodwill, and we do all want the same thing: the reign of Christ the King. So, guys, if you're on Twitter or if you're on anywhere and you see something somebody says and you don't 100% agree with their opinion, scroll past it.
Yeah,
you don't need to get hung up on it. You don't need to fight about every little thing. We're all on the same team here. Jeremiah, what are you doing Saturday morning at 10 a.m.?
Saturday morning at watching cartoons, man. I don't know.
Because we
playing dinosaurs.
We have Flanders coming on. We're doing a show on the resurrection of the body. So a Sedevik Contest had pointed out to me some things that Pope Benedict XVI had said on the resurrection of the body. And they were claiming that Benedict
he was Ratzinger.
It was Ratzinger at the time. He wasn't Pope. Saying that Benedict or Ratzinger was saying heretical things about the resurrection of the body. I personally think there's plenty of nuance there, that what he was saying, you could there's room to play around as a Catholic when you put. So Rob's going to pull up all the things the church says are de fide. We're going to pull up what Ratzinger taught, and we're going to bring
there is no, like, that'd be a tough one. Because, like, for example, like, what's required to be believed, that's a typical Protestant ploy. When a Protestant says, hey, why don't you give me the fundamentals, like what's required for me to believe? And Catholics don't have an answer for that. We don't have a list. There is no list for that.
So there are some de fide things we do have to believe, but I think Ratzinger was well within those bounds. So does Tim.
Of course.
Rob is a rigid Catholic, and he's going to push against us. He doesn't even like Jonathan Rumi as Jesus. We're going to have to push back on this guy. I'm just saying, Rob's Mr. Rigid over there. I think Ratzinger was well within the bounds where he was going. I think that the resurrection
single sentence.
I know. I'm just.
How can I talk about what Ratzinger was talking about?
I'll be honest. I think the resurrection of the body is a beautiful thing to meditate on, and I think it's an awesome thing to think about. Like, what will we be when that happens? And I think it's such an interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to the show. Jeremiah, if you're free Saturday morning, you want to jump on, it's going to be me, Rob, and Tim. I'll send you the link. Yeah. If you're free, you're more than welcome. I would love to get the two of you guys on. You guys are literally the guys who really inspired me to start this channel. So I would love to get the two of you on together.
Thank you, man. Yeah.
I just want to finish with one thing. So if we look back at history to like 2,000 years ago, there was another period of time where in the Roman Republic, a fourth turning ended at the end of like the Punic Wars. And there was a crisis that ended with two guys known as the Gracchi brothers. And the Republic was so concerned about conserving what little they had left of the true Roman Republic that after that, nothing really changed, right? For the next cycle of 4 turnings, you had 100 years from the Gracchi brothers that you went through people like Marius and Sulla and these dictator type folks that ended with Caesar, right? And Caesar was at the end of that next 4th turning. But finally, after Caesar, you had someone in Octavian that actually, instead of trying to conserve whatever was little was left of the old, was ready to give birth to something new. And that was the world that Christ was born into. So whatever is about to happen, I think we just have to be ready to work to not just hold on to whatever little is left of the America and the worlds we grew up in, but we got to be ready to make something new.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. I could talk to you guys for I could sit. If I didn't have work tomorrow, I would stay on until 3 a.m. talking with you guys. Jeremiah, you're one of my favorite people to talk to, man.
I appreciate you. You're one of my favorite people to talk to.
Dude,
we don't talk enough. That's why it was a terrible affront when you said that I was but I was ghosting you. I was like, how dare he say that?
Man. You're such a fun guy to just sit and BS with. Like, I have such a good time. Guys, we're going to wrap this up tonight. I have to get up for work in the morning. Rob's always making great points.
Well,
I'm the goof of the show.
I'll have an afterglow. in the Wolfpack chat or on.
Guys,
I don't know if Rob, if he's going to be awake. Either way, either direction, man. Make a pick. 50-50 pick.
Yeah. Let's do it on our chat.
Yep, do it on yours, and that way, yeah. So I'll be over on his. Have you guys done a live chat over there before?
Nope. This will be you did the first
one. So I did. I did the first live chat
on our channel.
I thought everyone was like, "What's going on?"
It was a Kaiser moment. I roll in and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna start a live chat, and they're just like, boom, there.
If you guys are not part of our Telegram, we have a Telegram. Yeah. Rob, show them how to get to the Telegram, and Jeremiah and Rob are gonna jump in the Telegram and do a live chat in the Telegram.
Yeah,
I wish
I could join
you guys, but I have to go up and do some family stuff. My wife's gone away.
Let me put this link in the live chat before we sign off here.
You guys can keep talking on air. I could.
Well, I just need to throw this link in real quick. Hold on.
I mean, we can do that, or we can go to your channel and talk.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to do. I have to go.
There's people here though, if they want to, you throw that link over at Traditional Thomas, man. You probably pop in here.
Yeah, let Nick jump in with you guys, man.
Yeah. So start talking.
Do we want to do it here or on Telegram?
Just do it here. We're already here.
I'm gonna go. You guys stay on here, man.
This is gonna be the 12-hour stream, Anthony. You're gonna wake up in the morning.
You gotta do, man. I love you, Jeremiah. I love talking to you, man. You're one of my favorite people in the world. Rob, I'll text you in the morning. Everybody, thank you guys for joining us. Rob, let me know how it goes in the morning, man. I'll see you guys later.
Okay. Yeah. God bless you, man.
And he's out.
There we are, man. Look at this, dude. And look at the colors, man. How sharp is that? What did I say, man? Look at how sharp that is, man. That is so smooth. Yeah, the colors behind him. Everybody, give him an applause. Seriously, just giving him an applause. If anybody looks at you and says, "What's it about?" Just say it's Rob's colors in his room. It's really great. The lighting, it's very attractive. It's awesome. So it is the great colors, man. That kind of burned orange, and you got that teal. It's just sharp.
My 4-year-old picked them because of Blippi.
Because of Blippi. That's what I'm saying, man. So Transformers, Blippi, you name it. That orange and teal, it's just through the roof. Well, think about this. Bluey's sister is orange. Yeah.
It's a good point.
Orange and blue. We're back to that again. So like very popular colors, very good colors. And it always works. And so this is really cool, man. I'm glad I hopped in here, and I'm glad we're talking about the fourth turning. Actually, I'll tell you, I was happy to see what Michael said about how there were some historical things that they got very wrong, and some of them. I would also say some of the predictions, like one of the criticisms about the book is that it's a little like it comes off like cold reading. You have these predictions and about a generation. Okay, what does that mean? That generation is made up of a lot of different people. So, but you have certain tendencies, which is why we can say boomers or you're a Gen X person. There are certain things that come to mind with that.
Right.
And so they were right about it. They were wrong. So they took a position, for example, right? When I say they, it's including the individual that when we talk about millennials, that word, that term and designation, that's where it came from. But like one of the predictions they had was that the millennials would be purity people when it comes to language. They'd be against like cussing and cursing and stuff. They're wrong, but they're on the other hand, they're right. It's even worse. It's way worse. Yeah, it's way worse. Like, so the purity police thing's even worse than we thought, because it's not just vulgarity, is news speak and everything else, and government getting involved in it and all that. And so and various predictions that they made that proved true, even if you want to say, well, it was within a year. They're not claiming to be mystical prophets. Right. They're looking at history books.
A 20 plus, plus minus time frame for.
And they're saying, the crisis for different things, the rise of the power politics, right? How that would work, the rise of the people clamoring for the what is it, the gray man? I forget what they call him. But the idea being, that a strong man that is there to settle the score, to let the others know this is the way it is now, right? Or we're going back to the way it was, either direction, but that they would be fine with that use of power in order to attain that. That's new, and we saw that. I mean, we're already in it, right?
And how you'd see, possible succession movements arrive, and
totally,
people willing to throw away the old orders and stuff like that, and that's definitely happening more and more. I think we see.
Oh yeah, I think there's so much, man, and some of it you get far enough into the lifespan of a technic and the way that it's affected a civilization. You can kind of make predictions based on that. You can make predictions. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to have magical eyeballs to read some of the writing on the walls, right? Sometimes it's just graffiti from the kid down the road. Like, you don't have, it's not all magic. You can look at history. That's why we can learn from it. We can learn from mistakes and learn from things that people did that were good and see similarities. And that's why we can see heroes. And we say, we recognize people enduring different times and different seasons of life that we may think and say that's similar to my own. A lot of traditional people do that with St. Athanasius, right? And their conversations about what they believe pertaining to the crisis and their faith and what they're going through. They, and so that sort of a thing. But he's correct. These guys, though, getting back to that, these guys, when they made certain corrections or certain predictions, I would say that they have demonstrated that they have an impressive amount of predictive power. Yeah, that to me, that's gold, right? That's diamonds. You've hit a gold mine in political science, right? If you can figure that sort of thing out.
Yeah, you talk about predictive power all the time, and the cycle of enthusiasm and things of that nature.
And totally, I mean, and that's because there are cycles. Once you get the sickness, right, it has to work its way through. Once you're born, you gotta live, right? There's a season for that. Sometimes you die faster, but in natural cycle, it's kind of like this. So you can look at it and you can see the similarities, which is why we can look out at nature. We can look out at the cycles and the seasons. We can look out at God's created order and see that, and that it's not just constant surprise. Imagine that. Imagine if we couldn't reflect back and find similarity with years gone by or with generations of people gone by.
Life would be nuts.
There's one thing that I thought was interesting, talking where they make a prediction that you would have my grandma's generation, so the generation preceding the boomers, right? That generation, you're going to end up having them and the Gen X people aligning during the darkness, right? And that the boomers and the millennials would align, and that the one beneath that, right, the newer one,
Gen
the
Z or
Zoomer,
whatever.
yeah, that they would be more extreme in both directions. They're just either directions. You're gonna end up having some wild junk going on with those guys. But to see like how the generations, in their estimation, how they play out, how these things develop, it gives a sense of you can look back and you can recognize certain tendencies, even just in the ordering of things, even the ordering of generations and the way where you start. You know, if you say you started to the point where you win a war and you're victorious, or you're happy and you're on the up, right, or you're ascending in your birth and you're ascending and stuff, you know, and kind of saying what kind of children will that generation in general have? Will they have a lot if they feel safe and secure and everything else, and they just won a victory and everything else? There's typically a lot of life bursting forth from that. And so you have that, but you also have this sense of destiny and identity that because you're the victor, you got the spoils. But those kids end up kind of growing up as kind of brats. And they also end up not really caring for the parents too much on certain things. And they don't have that. They didn't experience it the same. So they don't have the same nostalgia or anything like that goes with what preceded the victory.
If you compare, because according to their cycles, the ending of the last fourth turning or whatever was, the end of World War II. And the one before that was more or less a civil war. You know, if you look at the generations that won the Civil War and won World War II, following the Civil War, you have, the manifest destiny, right? You have us more or less settling the West, that sort of expansion. After World War II, you have the space race, right? But then, like you said, if you look at their kids, you have the boomers during the 60s and 70s, into the whole kind of hippie new age culture. But if you look at the kids of the Civil War generation, they're the people that actually began the first like new age period in like the 1890s, right?
Yeah. And you also see during that time, the ones that are continuing the tradition, the religious tradition of the parents and the grandparents, that they are experiencing also typically things like great awakenings. And for the boomers, that would have been the Jesus movement. You have so you have the city of God, city of man. You can follow the dynamic. That's why I think I like it as taking it to see for what it's worth, taking it like a Photoshop with layers, or those old those old screen projectors back in the day, where like your teacher had those films and had the markers, squeaky markers
or whatever,
the transparencies, and has it up there in the projector with the light and everything. But to layer it over that and to see similarities and differences, not to say I'm just a repeat of this guy, but to say the same thing I do when I see that I'm a similar thing to my dad, as I say, there are certain things my dad is exceptional at that I have similar things to him, but I may have seen him not use that gift and talent or to use it recklessly. And that I need to either learn from his example in a positive way or in a negative way, but that I won't really understand myself without understanding those who've gone before me that I am the fruit of. And that includes bigger groupings than just the individual. I think that this is where it troubles a lot of modern people, is that we're so individualistic now. It's difficult for us to think in terms of collectives. It really is. But when you talk about go out and make disciples of the nations, when you talk about that and God judging nations, God isn't just talking individual. That is your ultimate ending for yourself. But your nation, it matters. It wasn't stupid that people had covenantal connections in their founding charters, documents giving praise to the Godhead. It's not, it's not surprising that it is so startling that America was the first to lack that sort of thing explicit in this way, as had been the practice. but also that it had tucked within there things that allowed for no religious test. Right? And so
yeah, because we had no cultists as a nation, you know, unlike well, because we're not a nation truly.
Well, that's actually why I talk about the Imperium, is because for all of the things that I disagree with in the book, and there's plenty, at the same time, you know, I kind of look at it and I say that you know, it's the value of what you were saying and how that plays itself out in different groups, right? And by the way, which one is that? I'm sorry. I'm hearing all the noise, and I'm like trying to process this point about nations and God judging nations and people groups. And I'm seeing this little character. Look at this. Who is this?
This one is Ignatius Ambrose.
Ignatius Ambrose.
Yeah.
I have a son named Ambrose, and I have a son named Lucian Ignatius. My best friend, his confirmation name was Ignatius.
My confirmation name is Ignatius as well.
Yeah. Which Ignatius? Which one?
Loyola.
Loyola. Yeah, I don't know about that. No, it was Antioch for us, man. Antioch for us, Loyola for you. Yeah, you know, we can still be friends.
we thought about his middle name being Antiochus. But I love Ignatius of Loyola so much that.
No, yeah. I was saying though, I kind of got distracted by your awesome child. You know, blissfully, wonderfully distracted. But the idea that God judges in groups, and that we oftentimes take that out. But we need to remember even the judgment that God divides people into sheep and goats, right? Like you're divided into groups. There's categories for these, and I think that those are easier for civilizations that are more sociocentric. Our civilization is not sociocentric. We are about the individual. I like Jonathan Haidt's. He has an acronym, WEIRD, right? Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic, if I remember correctly. And so that's what we are, and that's an anomaly. That's an anomaly right in history. And so, yeah. So like when people talk about the judgment of groupings, the responsibility of groupings, the idea of, you know, a sin in your midst is a problem for everybody. That's like people struggle with that. They're like, well, if it's in your house and it doesn't break my knees or pick my pockets, we're good. Right. So like that is way foreign to a sociocentric mind. History, most people around the world in all time, even now, sociocentric.
Yeah, most of the rest of the world right now is like that.
What's that?
Yes, Ignatius.
Yeah. So like, yeah. So most of them have been sociocentric. Most of them view themselves, their people, their race, their religion, everything. They view them as superstructures, these units, and there's competing that goes on with these. And within those, you have groups that are excited, that have groups that their kids after them, that generally there's a tendency to kind of look at that and say, you know, kind of a spoiled brat, but I'm also really critical of my parents and the system. And then the next group ends up getting lost in the mix, ends up getting kind of, you know, and typically depressed, followed by a group of people who are the opposite of that, who are very fervent and strident, but typically end up again being contrary to their parents, which is why it made sense in that model. It made sense that the generations it would be a hop. You'd say my grandma and myself. And in reality, that's actually true. Like I look and I say, you know, my values in this culture war that we've been in for quite a while, I've always found that my values, even when people joke and say you turn on TV or you listen to talk radio or anything like that, and you find out what's the demographic. That's what we're talking about. Same thing. And it always has been, right? Because, you know, because people grow old in this, right? And we have kids and the kids grow old, and then they have kids and their kids grow old.
I was going to say, you know, one of the things that really kind of helped me see myself not just as an individual entity, but more of a product of my upbringing and my parents' upbringing and the upbringing even of my grandparents was having kids of my own, right? I mean, you see the way that everything you do affects them and has an impact on who they become. And even just the smallest things that you never think about, you end up seeing how it helps shape them into the person they are. And then you start questioning, well, how did I get to be like this? Right. And at first you almost have this, you almost want to throw blame, right, at like your parents for certain things that happened, or the way, the way you were raised with some things. But then you start questioning, well, why did they do that? What shaped them into who they were? And I don't know, you just go back further and further and you just realize, like, we're, no matter how, on one hand, we are individuals, yes, but we're also just a product of everything around us,
and we are part of what makes products outside of ourselves, right? Yeah. So like everything's an object to us and we're an object to others. Like we're one of the objects to them, right? Mm-hmm. Vice versa. And so I think that it's harder to grapple with, right? The individualism stuff. It's hard to grapple with. We like to focus on that. But even the Catholic Church has always had a kind of corporate understanding of itself as well as individual. You say our liturgy, right? Our liturgy. There's a reason why we say I believe, right? Yeah. There's a reason why even within that, because otherwise it's very collective, right? I mean, even marching in a line together to go participate from the one body and blood, right? So like, I mean, that's the most communal thing in the universe. I mean, you're participating in this one thing in a mystical manner. And so that, and also the way that we emphasize the common good. Yeah. The way we emphasize the role, the understanding of subsidiarity that is spherical. That's not just simply playing the game of Ayn Rand, that if we can imagine some crazy world where we can, imagine everybody taking care of themselves in this dystopian thing, because we can imagine it, and we can imagine it's at least possible, folks, that's where we ought to go. The Catholic Church has said, no, that's not wisdom. I mean, we can look at it and make decisions regarding this, regarding individuals and people groups and other things. And so with conversations about how history plays itself out, you have to incorporate the group dynamic. And plus, because the superstructure ends up determining so much of our lives, whether it's our religion, whether it's peer pressure, right? Our culture around us, our country, the biases that we've got, the social imaginary that we have, and we pick up the problems and the benefits, the things that were good that will eventually create their own problems, as it turns out, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the problems end up resulting in blessings down the road, right? So there's a weird thing with that. But every generation will end up picking up and participating in this ongoing thing that's a continuation of life contingent upon God, that has its ultimate end in Him, in the beatific vision. And to say, to bring the peoples of the world, the nations of the world together, in Him. And so I think that it's good to balance these things and to recognize the one and the many, to say there's a oneness to groupings, superstructures. There's also a manyness to it. Not only that there's many superstructures, but within the superstructures, there are many different people and opinions. And so you have the one and the many within that, the one and the many within your generation, that you say there are generalities, tendencies that we can recognize. The fact that most people, when they heard what you said about kind of finding somebody to blame, scapegoat, right now, boomers, unquestionably, it is unquestionably boomers' fault, or now, a lot of people are having issues with the Zoomers or the millennials. So everybody, I think Gen Z kind of floats. I am biased, right? I'm the tail end. I'm the young. I'm like the last year of Gen Z, and like, but
or Gen X. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Gen X.
I would say
yeah.
you're lucky because you get off the hook being Gen X.
It's like, well, okay. And so it's kind of one of these things we're kind of under the radar a little bit, maybe just depressed, melancholic or something. But to recognize those similarities and to balance those things out, to recognize that, yes, we are on a linear path. We are moving forward in time. It makes sense the way that we have our time demarcated, that we have our advancing forward with years. We just entered into 2023. It makes sense. We have past, present, future. It is now 10:29, and I can watch the seconds move, and all of that. So the change, and yet also to recognize the similarities, not only with your own generation, but the generations preceding you, the generations preceding them, and on and on and on they go. And to realize, I think that's actually one of the things that, because we've lost that, it's easy for us to have a buffer that divides us from the past, which allows us to not only a lack in empathy, but because we lack that empathy, to judge so sharply as individuals against them, even as collectives, entire groups of people. And so just to have that in your awareness, that your individualistic bias, that individualism, that Western weirdness going on with you, may actually have, and in all likelihood does, have a bigger impact on the way that you view the world and our place in the world, or your place in the world, than you even know. And that there's a lot to what other people say, and that we can fuse those things together without doing injury to the other. So you can have the manyness of the people and yet the similarities as well. And so you can balance out the one and the many, which I think is essential to any coherent Catholic philosophy of history.
So I guess last thing, because I have two kids that should have been in bed 2.5 hours ago, but how can we use things like, theories of history, like the fourth turning, or how can we use cycles and pattern recognition, and how can we use all that to restore all things in Christ in the coming years?
Well, I just talked about this last night. I was actually going to do a show today, and I decided to do this instead. So I'll do a show tomorrow. But I did a show last night, and I was saying that we can look at certain patterns and anticipate. So, like, for example, I admitted that I'm somebody who prays for revival. And I really mean it. When I say pray for revival, a lot of people have different things in mind. And I admitted that what I had in mind involved things that would be unsettling. I said, I anticipate there being an awakening in the West. And I think that awakening will be toward Christianity in general, but that we will see across the spectrum, including Catholics. And in fact, Catholics may be a huge portion of these, with the amount of apostasy we've been dealing with, but that we will see a return, and not just a return, but that there will be emotions and emotional responses, right? Physical reactions to the feeling of forgiveness, the feeling of being reconciled, the feeling of how messed up you were for so long in the secular age. And, and so I believe that. And I said, I think that we can look at patterns in history and recognize these things and say, it's at least ripe for it. It's why our Lord could say, he could say that the harvest is ripe. You're looking, and it was even just historical circumstance, right? And even the book of Acts kind of hints at this. So we should look at these things and recognize that if you're living in a time, which whether or not it plays perfectly to the fourth turning stuff or not, if you're in a generation that's spoiled rotten, thinking everything's on the up and up, everything's great, we're number one, blah, 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 it ain't going to be long before that group's wondering if they're the problem. And we can look and say, you get so into yourself and the freedom and the identity and the purpose and the mission and all that you sometimes your kids are sitting there saying, I didn't even know my parents. My family was broken, completely destroyed. My dad was a scumbag, drinking all the time. Family was messed up. but you know what? They put their face on when they went outside. Right? Like, I mean, so you have that generation of people. And then they want to change it. They want to change the structure and they're willing to expand the mind and break outside the system. So if we can see this coming and we can anticipate that, we can either fuel those things which would be necessary or we think could be good in that direction, or to minimize the damage. And for me, what I mean when I say emotional things, I said last night on the show, I hope and pray that there will be a day where I hear howling, weeping, crying, and even laughing in halls all around, in parishes all around the country, because people are on their knees crying out to God to forgive them, thanking them for the forgiveness that he has given them, for bringing them back, for being that prodigal son that's returned, and also for the pain of not only knowing what they've done, but knowing that when they came back, they're not the same. They're not the same. There's changes that have happened within them, that have happened to the way that they view the world, that the idea that can be eradicated. You're always going to deal with that. And that's going to be part of the difficulty of your faith now. It will be difficult. Secular age is not easy. So we can see this and say, these are things that are tendencies of these eras and ages and generations, and recognize the tendencies in that and say, this is what we can do to stave that, to kind of head that off. And these are things that are good tendencies and fuel that. Same thing as we do with our children. We see something good, you fuel it. If you see something bad, you redirect, you figure it out, you work with it. And to me, I'm the work with it guy. I'm not the let's escape out of here, man. Let's get out of here. I'm the guy that says, let's get in the muck and mire. We're going to set up the kingship for real. This is like my mission. And so there's tomorrow, unless the Lord takes it, Lord willing, tomorrow. Right? And so my mission is, what do you do from here? And that understanding how spirals work and the similarities between times and mistakes that people made and good decisions people made and how they can be applied to modern times and the current circumstances makes the book useful and the model useful.
It's looking at your body of work over the last couple of years with enthusiasm, secular age, kind of your new modern sort of enthusiasm sort of series you're doing. Like, I don't know if you do it consciously, but it all revolves around what you just said. Exactly what you just said.
Every bit of it. Well, because I had a breakdown, man. I had a breakdown on, and I've mentioned a couple times, but it was on Holy Faith Media. I watched a video of a lady who got the old, thing in the arm kind of thing, and had some experiences that were very unpleasant. And you could witness them for yourself, and you could see the kind of radical things that were happening involuntarily. Yeah. And I was watching. Now, I'd been doing 5 days a week, 3 hours a day for like almost a year or whatever. And I just sensationalistic, scandal chasing stuff. I mean, it was during 2020. So 2019, right? It was before COVID and during COVID, during all of this stuff. And, it's like I watched it and it was so overwhelming. And I finally, this one day I watched this thing and I said, I can't take it anymore. And the camera, I had a green screen, it was all black behind me. And I turned it off and you could see me. I'm like bawling. I'm trying not to, because I don't like, I have an ugly cry face, man. I don't like crying on camera, dude. And trying to talk after you've cried is dumb. Your snot coming up. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing to a professional voice person, right? To be crying like that. So like, but I cried and I lashed out and I said, you know what? I said, our leaders have betrayed us. I said, our governments betrayed us. Our leaders in our churches have betrayed us. They've turned their back. I said, and I said, what are we supposed to do? I said, I'm watching as everybody is getting cynical. People, it's looking for a miracle here, chasing an apparition there. It's all it is now, because they feel like there's no political, cultural, or religious solution to the problem. Yeah. And so because of that, we are now, it's doom, gloom. It's easy to get into the prophecy mindset that we're in the end time stuff. And that might be true. There seems to be plenty of indications that would play into that. That's been true too of different times in history too. But I'd look and say, but if it's not, then what? And I said, we have to do something. I can't just sit here and giggle anymore, because we're giggling ourselves to hell in a handbasket. And how am I going to face the Lord like that? What am I going to say to God when I stand before God and he's like, oh, you watched a lot of funny memes? Dude, that's it. what am I going to say? And so I said, we have to do something, and we got to pray. I vanished for 6 months, man. It was somewhere like that. Gone. And dude, my mother-in-law was in an accident. Brother-in-law died. Crazy. I had to get out. I would have been out no matter what for the time.
Right.
And during that time, came to some conclusions saying it has to be whatever I do, no matter what. I have to recognize the positives in this medium, in this generation, in this time, the negatives, and do what I was saying before: fuel the good things, either limit, prevent, restructure, reorder, the bad, that sort of thing. Make those corrections and stuff. And so those changes. And I said, I will. That's the only way I'll do it. I said, I will not do it anymore if all I do is wake up to find what's the craziest story so I can giggle and go on rants. I won't. I think it's a sinful abuse of my time, especially given the gravity of our situation. I think that the impact it's going to have on my children, for me to sit around and just giggle myself to death and amuse myself to death, is a serious problem. And so I said, I need to utilize these gifts and talents and to think beyond just myself and think, how can I best affect others? And I had to make that choice between three things, right? Name. Do I want a name for myself? Do I want big bucks? Not going to lie, that would be nice. Or influence. And I said, I would rather die knowing on the other side that I had laid groundwork for things, and for setting the stage, for providing environments and atmospheres wherein people are able to grow, where the faith is able to flourish, where traditions are able to be just dug deep into the individual in their faith, not just their faith and what they know, but their practice in everyday life and even what they see in their everyday experiences. And I said, if we can do that as a group, and not as I'm your leader, follow me, I'm the big boss guy, but instead say, we can do this together. You've got gifts and talents I don't have, and I have ones that you don't have. And together we've got more gifts than either of us have individually. So what am I doing if I'm not willing to work with others who are in good faith and goodwill, using their gifts and talents for the advancement of the kingdom of Christ, the King? So that's my mission. If the Lord comes, hallelujah. If the Lord comes, as I said, thank God, because you know what? This is hard. Secular age sucks. Yeah. It is not awesome. And it's not going to get better. It's not all of a sudden just going to be like, yay, it's really great. There's a lot of hard work to do, in my view. A lot. And it's not going to pay, probably even in my lifetime. But to me, it's like planting trees. I know too many people who have Christmas trees, man, that were planted before they were even born, before when Grandpa was alive. That's when that tree was planted, and they bring that in, and it is absolutely beautiful. I feel that's what we do with our children and what we do with our work, that when we lay that groundwork for the future. And we have to do it in more permanent things. And that's what I've done with my show. Every single decision I make with the show involves something to do with that core principle, that core set of understandings. Everything I do.
Well, I know I appreciate all the work you've done. I think I've watched almost every one of your shows over the last few years. I'm meaning Catholic, so thank you so much for everything that you do. I know a lot of people feel that same way, so thank you very much, man.
Yeah, God bless you, homie. Yeah, and thank you. I'm glad we stuck around. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
Always enjoy talking to you, buddy. So, all right. Well, God bless everybody. It was awesome. And if you want to get in touch with me, I know, of course, you put the links to your Telegram in your description below?
I didn't, but I can.
You got to do it, man. You got to do it. So this is what's going to happen. By tomorrow, Rob's going to put a bunch of links in there. And you're going to go and you're going to check out the links, and you're going to subscribe, and you're going to like, and you're going to do them a big favor. Okay. You're going to not just like something, his page, and follow it, but you're going to go and you're going to like something or retweet it. And you're going to do one even more. You're going to comment so that you do all three, because social media knows how it works. And it says, look, if you've liked something, followed something, commented and shared and all that, and you've done all of those things, not just one, because that's a throwaway. How many of you have liked or followed something you don't even care about? Right? Show you care about Rob. They give you plenty of good reasons all the time. Awesome dudes, awesome show, awesome content, awesome guests, and it's only begun. And
how can they show that they care about you?
I already know they do. I already know they love me. Huggable, lovable. So, okay.
Yes, Haley, I will put the books in the description as well by tomorrow morning.
So yeah, and I'll give him the copies real quick. I'll just tell everybody here. You can timestamp it. The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt, and I have a book. I have a link to a list of books that I've suggested for theology, philosophy, psychology, and politics. So I've got that. I'll share the link with that. This is Spengler, The Decline of the West. That's one that I referenced today. I referenced The Fourth Turning. I also referenced, I mentioned St. Augustine, The City of God. You got to read City of God. You want to see the bad mamma jamma, right? And understand history in the greatest sense. You got to read that for just an amazing philosophy of history. Even to this day, it's even been a continued impact even on Dyer's life with Augustine and City of God, stuff like that.
Well, in Flanders.
Yeah. Flanders, of course. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And so, and if you want to know, it's one of those things. I want to encourage people. Last thing, I want to encourage people, with what I do in studying enthusiasms, for example, or in studying political economy, which is my minor, or journalism, which was my major in college, that I go to the people who have studied that and who have put together ideas, models, theories that help us to understand ourselves and our society and everything better. And it does not require, in my estimation, that they be Catholic. And it's one of those things. So I'm okay. And I don't say this is okay for everybody. Some people, you'd have to talk to your spiritual director if he thinks that it would be wise, or she would be wise for you to read certain books. For my career, I have to read certain ones. And I have found them not always to be just something to bash. Sometimes they're extremely, extremely helpful. This is one of those. This book here, The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt. This book, of course, he's a agnostic guy. He's got some TED Talks that are excellent about transcendence. That's absolutely excellent. About groupishness, amazing. He's part of the intellectual dark web now. He was one of those they tried to cancel. Stuff like he's one of those professors, right? So a genius, bona fide genius of a guy, in kind of in that world. But he talks about the moral foundations that people have, and how that's fleshed out in our behaviors, and how those things, like if you have a moral foundation, you emphasize hierarchy. Do you care about that, or are you more one that is emphasizing your freedom, your individualism, right? So do you care more about order or more about the freedom side of these things? And the book is absolutely great, but you have to be able to accept what he says. You don't have to accept it to justify the solution, but except that he uses arguments from evolution pertaining to bees and ants mainly. So if you can get past that, the arguments for moral foundations, that is not dependent upon that. Right. In my estimation, I say that it works completely compatible with how our anthropology is Catholics.
Okay. Well, it has been almost 3 hours.
Yeah. All right. We're out of here, buddy. Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right. God bless you guys. Yeah. I'll go over to my chat if anybody in here wants to, if they're still going to be awake for a little bit. I'll head over to my chat here for a little bit.
T-me/the Wolfpack chat.
Yep. The letter T .me, M-E, like, / the Wolfpack chat. And you'll see in there, it'll say that it was a voice chat that was started. You just click on that, the little thing, it's got a hyperlink, it's blue. You click on that, it takes you right in. You're not on video right away. You're not on audio right away. You make the choice to either be on or to talk or to just lurk. We got plenty of all all the above. And so I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeremiah, and thank you everyone else, and have a good night.
All right.
Unite the clans. Enoch. Let's go. Yo.